Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Zoe Hastings. Zoe Hastings was born on November 21, 1996, in Kansas, as the oldest of 5 children. She was a responsible sibling, often putting her parents' needs before her own. Her family was deeply rooted in their faith, spending a significant amount of time at church. When Zoe was in high school, her family moved to Dallas, where she attended a school that fostered her creativity and passion for the arts. She excelled in drawing and enjoyed participating in school plays. Outside of school, Zoe worked at an art studio and as a lifeguard during her summer breaks. After graduating, Zoe had the opportunity to attend top universities, but she decided to delay her education to focus on her church. In October 2015, at the age of 18, Zoe was preparing for a mission trip with her church. She planned to attend the Sunday service to discuss the trip's details. Zoe left her house around 4:40 p.m. in the family minivan, promising her parents she would return for dinner. However, she failed to come back, which was unusual for her. Zoe's parents tried to reach her after the service, but she didn't respond to their messages or calls. They then contacted her friends, thinking she might have visited someone, but no one had seen her. As the evening wore on, her parents grew increasingly worried and decided to call the church to see if Zoe had shown up there. However, they were surprised to learn that Zoe had never arrived at the church. This was highly unusual behavior for Zoe, as she had always kept her parents informed of her current whereabouts and had never disappeared without explanation. So they drove themselves to the police station to report Zoe missing, and the police began the search. The police spent all night retracing the route from Zoe's house to the church but found no sign of Zoe. Using an iPhone tracking app, police were able to locate her phone. They discovered Zoe's phone just a few hundred yards from the church, near a small creek across the street. Zoe's parents rushed to the creek. An officer approached them and informed them that a car accident had been reported a few hours earlier and that police had received a call from a witness walking a dog. That witness claimed that a man had approached him and said that a woman had been injured in a car accident near the creek. The witness rushed to the scene and found a woman lying in a pool of blood, so he called 911. As the police investigated, they quickly identified the victim as Zoe Hastings. However, it soon became clear that she had not died as a result of the accident. The evidence suggested that she had been murdered. Zoe's body was found a short distance from the minivan, which was partially submerged in the creek. There was a significant amount of blood near her body, and police observed multiple cuts on her neck. Her dress was pulled up, and her underwear was rolled down, leading detectives to suspect that the killer had likely assaulted and abused her. The police prevented Zoe's parents from approaching her body, shielding them from the gruesome scene. As they investigated further, they discovered several clues. Notably, all the minivan doors except the driver's side were locked, suggesting that the perpetrator may have driven the vehicle themselves or approached Zoe directly at the scene. Beneath the bridge, about 10 feet from the creek, a blood-stained knife was discovered. It's likely that this was the weapon used in Zoe's murder. By examining her phone records and GPS data, investigators established that Zoe had arrived at the creek by 5:01 p.m. after leaving home at 4:41 p.m. GPS revealed she drove there in approximately 20 minutes, indicating her death probably occurred within a few minutes of arrival. To account for this timeline, investigators reconstructed her activities that afternoon, tracing her stops from leaving her home. During the examination, investigators uncovered evidence. Zoe visited the nearby DVD rental store after departing home. To return a DVD she borrowed from that rental shop situated beside a Walgreens, near her place of residence. More than 50 people near that area had confirmed it. Among them had been Lester Clark, a tattoo shop employee who had worked next door to the DVD store. It wasn't until a few hours after work around 4:45 p.m. that Lester revealed he had seen a female customer who had been shopping at the store and had approached her. Lester admitted to having witnessed Zoe going to the DVD rental store. Lester added that he saw a man behaving suspiciously near the crime scene. Lester described the man as short and heavily built, and African American. However, Lester was too far away to notice any other distinguishing features. Later that evening, Lester saw the same man walking towards the store alone. The second witness, Gary Whitman, a homeless man, corroborated Lester's account. At around 4:45 p.m., Gary saw a woman approaching a white minivan in the parking lot. A man then approached her from behind, preventing her from entering the vehicle. The man showed her something from his pocket, and the woman subsequently got into the car, moving to the passenger seat. The man then drove away. Gary also described the suspect as short and heavily built, and African American, and found the situation highly suspicious. He went into the store and asked the clerk to call 911, but it is unclear if the clerk made the call. During the investigation, experts made several key discoveries. A forensic pathologist examined Zoe's body and found a small amount of male semen, indicating that Zoe had been sexually assaulted before being murdered. However, the amount of semen was too small to conduct a full DNA analysis. Investigators analyzed Zoe's car for any foreign fingerprints on the doors or steering wheel, but found none. This discovery, combined with witness statements, suggested that the killer may have driven Zoe away in her minivan. However, the lack of fingerprints did not mean that the killer did not drive the car, as they may have wiped down the surfaces after the crime. When examining Zoe's body, investigators found several hairs, but they were too small to extract a full DNA sample from. However, a breakthrough came when a DNA sample was found on a knife near the crime scene. The DNA was matched to 34-year-old Antonio Cochran, who had a violent criminal history, including arrests for theft, assault, and home invasion. 1 year before the murder, Antonio was accused of sexually assaulting a 17-year-old girl, the daughter of his girlfriend. According to the girl, Antonio offered her a ride, but took her to a secluded area and assaulted her. He was arrested and claimed that the sex was consensual, but the prosecution was unable to prove his guilt, and he was acquitted. Antonio became the prime suspect in the murder investigation. As a result, he was arrested. However, during the interrogation, Antonio denied any involvement in the crime. To gather more evidence, investigators collected a DNA sample from Antonio and compared it to the semen found on the victim's body. Unfortunately, both DNA samples were too small for a full analysis, so the experts used a different method. The partial DNA profiles from the hair and semen were then compared to Antonio's DNA. The results showed that it was matched, but not definitively. Meanwhile, detectives searched Antonio's smartphone and found some incriminating text messages. On the day before the murder, Antonio sent a message to a friend he lived with, stating he was moving out and would never see him again. At 1:48 a.m. the next day, Antonio sent another message to his ex-girlfriend, telling her that his stepmother had died right in front of him. But this information was later found to be false. In the hour leading up to Zoe's death, Antonio sent 2 texts to another woman, revealing that he had been drinking, driving around the city, and crying. These messages were his last before the incident. Later that evening, at 9:30 p.m., Antonio texted a friend, expressing confusion and despair about his life. The next day, he sent a message to his ex-girlfriend, stating that his life was over and that she would soon understand why. Detectives investigating Antonio's online activities found that he had visited local news websites over 30 times before his arrest, with a particular focus on the crime sections. Notably, 5 of these access were directly related to articles about Zoe's murder. This was unusual, as prior to the death of Zoe, Antonio rarely visited news sites. His browser history also showed a single visit to a page about gang activity. Further investigation of Antonio's smartphone revealed GPS data that, at 4:34 p.m., Antonio's phone connected to a cell tower covering the area where the store was located, coinciding with the time Zoe was there. Although this data was not conclusive evidence, it suggested that Antonio's phone was in the vicinity of the store just minutes before Zoe left the parking lot. This was significant, as Antonio's home was far away, and his phone had been connected to a different nearby tower throughout the day. Detectives discovered that Antonio had started working at a grocery store just 3 days before the incident. However, on the day after the murder, he skipped his shift without providing any explanation. Despite the extensive circumstantial evidence against Antonio, the strongest evidence remained his DNA on the knife handle. Nevertheless, this evidence alone might not be enough for a conviction, as merely holding a knife does not prove involvement in the murder. It is possible that Antonio used the knife in a different context, and someone else could have used it to commit the crime. Since no other evidence was found, detectives decided to proceed with the case and take it to court. The prosecution presented its report of the events. According to the prosecution, Antonio approached Zoe in the parking lot, threatening her with a knife and forcing her to get into her car. He then took the driver's seat and drove away. The prosecution argued that Antonio, who was emotionally distressed due to the death of a relative and intoxicated from consuming a significant amount of alcohol. The investigators' theory was that Antonio had intended to assault Zoe when he abducted her. He chose his victim, Zoe, by chance when he spotted her in the parking lot. Antonio saw an opportunity to commit a crime and acted on it. He then drove to a secluded creek area that was difficult to spot due to the surrounding trees and low-lying terrain. At this location, he forced Zoe out of the car and attacked her, stabbing her 6 times in the neck area. Antonio got back into the car and tried to drive it into the creek, possibly to hide any remaining evidence. However, the car only partially submerged, allowing Antonio to potentially wipe his fingerprints from the steering wheel and door handle before fleeing the scene and return to the store, where Lester had seen him according to initial testimony. The defense argued that most of the evidence was not convincing enough and did not prove Antonio's guilt. For example, hair analysis only showed that the DNA could not be ruled out as belonging to Antonio. But it did not confirm his involvement. DNA on the knife also did not necessarily prove that Antonio committed murder. The defense argued that Antonio could have touched the knife under different circumstances before working at the store. They suggested he might have used the knife while working at a movie theater, where he sometimes collected items left behind by visitors. However, there was no evidence to support this claim. Furthermore, if someone had taken the knife from the theater and used it to commit the murder, they would have had to be careful to avoid removing Antonio's DNA from the handle, which would have been a difficult task. The defense attempted to downplay the testimony of the second witness, Gary, by revealing that Gary had a warrant for his arrest due to a parole violation. They tried to exclude Gary's testimony, but the prosecution argued that Gary's willingness to cooperate with police, despite the risk of arrest, proved his sincerity. Gary insisted he wanted to do the right thing, even if it meant getting arrested. Antonio's lawyers argued that their client was elsewhere at the time of Zoe's murder, in order to helping a friend, but they failed to provide any substantial evidence to support this claim. Initially, the prosecution sought the death penalty for Antonio, but as the trial progressed, they realized this would be difficult to achieve with the available evidence. They dropped the request for the death penalty. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury found Antonio guilty of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Zoe's parents expressed gratitude to the investigators and all those involved in the trial for delivering justice for their daughter. Her father shared that he had always warned his children about the dangers of the world and had taken every precaution to protect them. However, despite his efforts, his eldest daughter was abducted just a short distance from their home, and he was powerless to prevent it. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother Vicky. She had two siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, who looked up to Katrina as a role model. As children, Miranda would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup, admiring her older sister and wanting to be just like her. As the years passed, Katrina and Miranda formed a strong bond, becoming more like best friends than sisters. Katrina grew up in Musney Park, Illinois, a suburban community outside the city, after her parents separated, and she lived with her mother. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind, fun-loving person who cherished the holiday season and enjoyed giving humorous gifts to her friends and family. She was deeply involved in her church and had a strong desire to help others, always willing to lend a hand to those in need. Despite her happiness, Katrina longed to find love and thought she had found it when she met Todd Smith at a bar when she was 20 years old. Todd, a self-employed financial planner, had 3 daughters and worked from home. He met Katrina, and despite their differences, they clicked. Todd's flexible schedule allowed them to travel frequently. After 3 years together, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned a small wedding in a local park, and Katrina was thrilled about their future. She loved Todd's daughters and was eager to build a life with him. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was an excellent match for Katrina. They trusted him to take care of her and believed the couple was meant to be. After marrying, Katrina and Todd settled in Musney Park and started their new life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother and said she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, she mentioned she would visit for dinner on October 24th and had news to share. Vicky suspected that something was amiss, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Before ending their phone call, Vicky promised Katrina that she would cook her favorite meal, chicken and dumplings. Tragically, Vicky would never get the chance to keep that promise. Days later, Katrina vanished, and Vicky would never lay eyes on her again. On October 23rd, at 5 p.m., Todd, Katrina's husband, called 911 to report her disappearance. He told the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he had been trying to reach her for hours without success. When he drove to the house, he found it empty. Katrina's siblings, Miranda and Chad, were alarmed when they heard the news. Chad, who was undergoing military training in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the evening of the 23rd, a concerned citizen notified the police about an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. The caller reported that the car was not parked on the road, but rather in an easement, suggesting it had been hastily abandoned. When authorities arrived to investigate, they ran the license plate and identified it as belonging to Katrina Smith. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer found no signs of a struggle or any trace of Katrina herself. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was adamant that her daughter's disappearance was a clear indication of foul play when she learned that Katrina's car had been abandoned in an unfamiliar area. It was the only logical explanation to Vicky. If Katrina's car was found in that location, someone must have taken her and left the car there. Following the discovery of her car, Katrina's case was officially categorized as a missing person, and the search efforts intensified significantly. On October 12th, at 11 p.m., the police took Todd Smith in for a formal interview at the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he last saw his wife Katrina on October 10th, not October 22nd. He stated that Katrina had come home briefly to do laundry in preparation for a big job interview the following day. According to Todd, while the laundry was in progress, Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home at 8:30 p.m. Todd reported that Katrina briefly returned home before leaving again to make one last stop. She had told him she needed to complete an errand before returning to the house she was watching for a friend. The next day, after Katrina was declared missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, he broke down in tears as he begged for anyone with information about her whereabouts to come forward. As the search for Katrina continued, search teams composed of officers and volunteers worked tirelessly to find her. They focused their efforts on a nearby park, where Katrina's car had been abandoned, hoping to find evidence or clues about her disappearance. When Katrina's brother Chad arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, he joined the search for his missing sister at the park. With his military background, Chad took charge of the search party. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated their efforts to ensure a thorough search. As the search continued, the officers employed a methodical approach, using dogs and walking in straight lines to cover as much ground as possible and detect any potential evidence, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Katrina's mother Vicky focused on spreading awareness about her daughter's disappearance. She posted missing person flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts throughout the town, hoping to reach as many people as possible. Despite her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was determined to keep searching for Katrina, even if she couldn't participate in the physical search herself. Todd, Katrina's husband, was overcome with emotion during this difficult time. Chad, trying to be supportive, urged Todd to stay strong and focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side, sympathetic to his brother-in-law's grief. Meanwhile, the police investigation turned up some disturbing clues. An officer found Katrina's purse near her abandoned car, and as he searched further down the road, he discovered more of her belongings, including her cell phone and bloody towels. It was clear that someone had deliberately discarded Katrina's possessions as they drove away from her car. Unfortunately, the police still had no idea where Katrina was, but they feared the worst. The recovered items were sent to the crime lab for analysis, and the police awaited the results with bated breath. As the police searched for clues, they explored every aspect of Katrina's personal life to understand what might have led to her disappearance. They wanted to know if she had any relationships outside her marriage, was involved in gambling or drugs, and what her daily routines were like. To gather this information, they interviewed her friends and family. Everyone they spoke to described Katrina as a kind, responsible person who always put her duties first and avoided anything risky. Her loved ones said she was dedicated to her job and had a strong work ethic. They also reported that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. The people who knew Katrina described her as a loyal partner and a hard worker who always did the right thing. During the investigation into her disappearance, a woman came forward with an interesting clue. She claimed to have seen a blue car, similar to Katrina's, parked on a bridge over Rock River on the night she vanished. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it. Although the witness couldn't describe the person's gender or race, her tip led the police to suspect that Katrina might have been a victim of foul play and ended up in the river. However, they still needed concrete evidence to support this theory. The police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, looking into potential motives and suspects. Despite seeming to have a happy marriage, her husband Todd was still a person of interest. As the authorities knew that hidden conflicts or secrets can exist in any relationship, their inquiry led them to a teenager in town who had previously shown an unhealthy obsession with Katrina. Earlier in the year, Katrina had confided in friends about the boy's behavior, including allegations of voyeurism such as spying on her through her bedroom window. This had made Katrina increasingly anxious at the time. Although the boy's activities had stopped when he left for college, the police wondered if he might have returned and resumed stalking Katrina. They devoted significant resources to finding him. 3 days into the search, crucial clues were discovered on Katrina's cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab. The phone proved to be a crucial source of evidence for the investigators. By examining Katrina's cell phone records, they uncovered a wealth of information, including her text messages, call logs, pictures, videos, and GPS location data. This information enabled the police to reconstruct a more accurate timeline of Katrina's activities. The investigation revealed that Katrina was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel. Initially, they had met after work and developed a connection that eventually turned romantic. However, a background check on Guy Gabriel exposed a troubling history of domestic violence. Additionally, the detectives found text messages in which Guy Gabriel demanded that Katrina leave her husband Todd for him. Given Guy Gabriel's violent past and his messages to Katrina, he became the top suspect in her disappearance. The police suspected that Guy Gabriel might have reacted violently towards Katrina because she refused to leave her husband for him. When Katrina's family discovered her affair with Guy, they were shocked and disbelieving. The seemingly perfect couple, Katrina and Todd, had hidden a dark secret. The news of Katrina's infidelity devastated Todd, who was unaware of the affair until the police investigation. Guy Gabriel was questioned by the police at the station, and although he appeared nervous, he admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. He claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During the investigation, the police uncovered an incident that had occurred 2 weeks before Katrina's disappearance. Witnesses reported that a black Volkswagen Jetta had sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, causing a scene during lunchtime. A mysterious driver in a VW Jetta threw a stack of flyers out of the car's sunroof, scattering them among the employees gathered outside. The flyers contained a derogatory remark about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. Meanwhile, the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, who shared that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and threatened. Katrina had even considered buying a gun for protection and had become paranoid about being followed. She had gone so far as to take her phone to a store to check for a tracking device, suspecting that someone was monitoring her movements. At the police garage, crime scene investigators searched Katrina's car for clues and used a special chemical called luminol to detect blood. They found a large amount of blood in the trunk. Meanwhile, a firefighter pulled a mysterious object from the water, which turned out to be a severely decomposed female body. The body was difficult to identify due to its condition. At the medical examiner's office, dental experts compared the body's teeth to Katrina Smith's dental records and confirmed that the body belonged to her. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Katrina's family was devastated by the news, and her mother, Vicky, was in disbelief. The police cleared the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina as a suspect after verifying his alibi. The police then turned their attention to Guy Gabriel, Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage. Guy provided an alibi, claiming he was at work during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. His managers and co-workers corroborated his alibi, and the police cleared him as a suspect. Although Guy was no longer a suspect, the police asked for his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy revealed that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior and encouraged Katrina to leave her marriage. The police investigated Katrina's marriage and discovered several concerning details, including Katrina's desire to divorce Todd, her meeting with a divorce attorney, and her separation from Todd. The police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion grew stronger when they discovered that Todd had test-driven a black Jetta, similar to the car involved in the flyer incident, around the same time it occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her murder and was already in custody, they were shocked and devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, feeling physically ill at the thought that Todd could be responsible for her daughter's murder. The police also discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, providing a potential motive for the crime. Katrina was the sole breadwinner for her family since Todd was unemployed. The police suspected that Todd might have motive to kill his wife, as he would gain access to their funds if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage with brays of blood on it, which led them to believe it might be the murder weapon. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting a bat was used. A DNA test confirmed that the blood on the bat was Katrina's, linking the bat to the crime. The police also found a clean area under the car, which seemed suspicious. Further examination revealed that the bloodstains matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, Todd was arrested and charged with her killing, bringing relief to her family. At his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Katrina had recently visited a divorce attorney, indicating marital problems. On the night of the murder, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry for a job interview the next morning. The prosecution alleged that Katrina told Todd their marriage was over, triggering his violent reaction. They claimed that Todd grabbed a baseball bat, killed Katrina in the garage, and then disposed of her body by throwing it off a bridge at Rock River. The jury found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rebecca Bleefnick. Rebecca and Tim, who met at Quincy University, were the epitome of a perfect couple. Rebecca was a biology major and a tennis player, while Tim was a star football player. 2 years after graduating, the practical couple decided to tie the knot. Instead of splurging on an engagement ring and a lavish honeymoon, they chose to save their money. Although Rebecca had a genuine interest in medicine and had dreamed of becoming a doctor, she decided to pursue motherhood instead. Her dream came true when she and Tim had 3 sons. Tim was known for his charisma and ability to entertain. In 2008, he auditioned for American Gladiators, making it to the final round. Years later, in 2019, he received an invitation from the producers of Family Feud to participate in the show with his family. Rebecca's nursing school commitments prevented her from joining Tim on the TV show Family Feud. Undeterred, Tim assembled a team of family members, including his parents and brothers. The show's format features 2 teams competing to guess the most popular responses to survey questions from 100 people. Despite being unprepared, Tim's team performed well, earning points and ranking second on the scoreboard. They went on to participate in 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000, which was divided equally among the family members. However, Tim did not share any of the winnings with his wife Rebecca. This decision highlights the strain on Tim and Rebecca's marriage, which began when Rebecca pursued a nursing career against Tim's wishes. Tim had expressed concerns about Rebecca's well-being and ability to manage stress, but Rebecca's friends believed Tim was opposed to her independence and autonomy. Rebecca's friends noticed that she was becoming increasingly unhappy in her marriage over time. At first, her marriage to Tim was relatively happy for about 5 years, but then Tim started to become more controlling and manipulative. Despite Rebecca's hard work in her nursing studies and job, Tim didn't pull his weight at home, leaving Rebecca to handle most of the responsibilities. Rebecca realized that their marriage was struggling and wanted to fix it, so she suggested that they go to marriage counseling together. She believed that counseling could help them find solutions and improve their relationship. However, Tim refused to go, despite Rebecca's efforts to save their marriage. In January 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce, which caught Rebecca off guard. She had been committed to working through their issues, but Tim had already made up his mind. He moved out of their family home and into a new house across town, leaving Rebecca to pick up the pieces. Tim and Rebecca's divorce was extremely contentious. They were unable to agree on anything, and their communication broke down completely. The couple disputed several issues, including who would get custody of the children, how they would divide their property, and how much alimony one would pay the other. Things escalated to the point where Tim felt threatened and applied for a court order to protect himself from Rebecca, alleging that she was stalking and harassing him. Rebecca had a different view of the situation, accusing Tim of harassment. She shared her concerns with friends through text messages, describing incidents where Tim yelled at her, pushed her in front of their sons, and threw things. Rebecca feared Tim might do something drastic to take her children away, which alarmed her sister, who knew Rebecca's fears were valid and that she needed help to protect herself. Rebecca then filed for an order of protection against Tim, claiming he entered her home without permission and lied about their interactions. However, the judge denied both Rebecca and Tim's requests, instead ordering them to stay away from each other's homes, except during child custody exchanges. In February 2023, Tim told the police he wouldn't return a gun, calling Rebecca a derogatory name. At the time, Rebecca and Tim's 3 sons, aged 12, 10, and 5, were staying with Tim at his home, just a mile from Rebecca's residence. Their divorce was set to be finalized in just 1 week. Tim contacted Rebecca's father the next day, worried because he couldn't reach Rebecca, and she had failed to pick up the boys from school as planned. Given Rebecca's dedication as a mother, her father suspected something was seriously wrong. Concerned for Rebecca's safety, her father rushed to her house. When he arrived, he entered the house, calling out to Rebecca, but received no response. He went upstairs to her bedroom, where he found a disturbing scene. Rebecca lay on her back, covered in blood and gunshot wounds. After Rebecca's father discovered her body in the bathroom, detectives and forensic experts arrived at the house. They began by carefully examining the outside of the property, searching for clues. Their investigation revealed that the suspect had probably entered the house by forcing open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. The discovery led investigators to believe that the suspect used a patio chair to gain access to the house and climb up to the roof. By retracing the suspect's likely path, they went to Rebecca's bedroom, where they found the door had been violently kicked in or broken. The state of the door suggested to investigators that the suspect had forcibly entered the room, probably in search of Rebecca. Evidence indicated that Rebecca had tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect had pursued her and caught up. Ultimately, the suspect shot Rebecca inside the bathroom. During their search of the bathroom where Rebecca's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. Upon examining Rebecca's phone, investigators found a 911 call dialed at 1:11 a.m. This led them to form a theory about the events of that night. They believed that as the suspect chased Rebecca through the house, she tried to call for help, but accidentally dialed a wrong number before she could try calling 911 again. The misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. suggested to investigators that the suspect had knocked the phone out of Rebecca's hand. They believed Rebecca was likely killed around this time. However, when police questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them remembered hearing any noise around 1:11 a.m., which raised suspicions among the investigators. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not a botched burglary, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind significant evidence. One notable discovery was a partial shoe print found near the point where the suspect entered the house. The shoe print discovered at the crime scene could be crucial in identifying the type of shoe worn by the suspect, including its make and model, as well as providing details about the size and shape of their feet. The presence of 8 9mm shell casings and small pieces of shredded plastic near Rebecca's body also provide significant leads for the investigators. Despite collecting these key pieces of evidence, the investigators were unsure how to interpret their findings. To gain more insight, they decided to send the evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. Specifically, they wanted to determine if any of Rebecca's personal belongings matched the evidence found at the crime scene. The investigation began when Rebecca's father found her lifeless body in the bathroom of her home. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators carefully examined the exterior of the house, leading them to identify how the perpetrator gained entry by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. Here's what likely happened. The suspect used a patio chair to climb up to the roof and entered the house. The investigators retraced the suspect's steps and found that the bedroom door had been violently kicked in or broken, suggesting the suspect had forced their way in, probably looking for Rebecca. It seems Rebecca tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect caught up with her. Unfortunately, the suspect shot and killed Rebecca in the bathroom. The investigators found Rebecca's phone near her body and examined it. They discovered that she had dialed 911, but mistakenly entered an extra digit, 91126, at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped the investigators piece together the events. They believe Rebecca was desperately trying to call for help as the suspect chased her through the house, but she accidentally dialed the wrong number. Before she could try calling 911 again, the suspect likely knocked the phone out of her hand. The timing of the misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. led investigators to believe that Rebecca's murder likely occurred around that time. However, when they questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them reported hearing any suspicious noises, which was surprising given the fact that she had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not the result of a burglary gone wrong, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind a significant amount of evidence. One crucial discovery was a partial shoe print near the point of entry, which could help identify the brand and model of the shoe, as well as the size and shape of the suspect's foot. The crime scene also yielded 8 9mm shell casings, and small pieces of shredded plastic were found scattered near Rebecca's body. After gathering all the evidence, the investigators were unsure what to make of their findings, so they decided to send the CED evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. The detectives wanted to determine if any of the evidence found at the crime scene matched Rebecca's belongings. A neighbor had installed a security camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year earlier. The camera was directed towards the neighbor's driveway, which shared a boundary with Rebecca's home, and was set to turn on and alert the neighbor whenever it detected movement. Although the camera didn't capture anything significant on the night of Rebecca's death, it did record something unusual the previous day at 1:05 a.m. The footage showed a person walking down the driveway towards the back of Rebecca's house, a potentially crucial discovery in the case. About 48 minutes after the initial sighting, the same individual was seen walking in the opposite direction. Interestingly, Rebecca's neighbor had captured a similar incident on their camera about a week prior, on February 14th. After reviewing their security footage, Rebecca's neighbors noticed a suspicious dark-clad figure lurking around her house on Valentine's Day, prompting them to alert her immediately. Upon learning about the mysterious figure, Rebecca became increasingly paranoid. Although she claimed not to have seen anyone on her property, she had heard unsettling voices in her backyard the previous night, which frightened her. Based on the security camera footage, the police expanded their search to neighboring houses to gather more evidence of the dark-clad individual. Their search led them to a house near the Quinney bus barn, where they found footage of a person riding a bike, dressed in dark clothing, heading towards Rebecca's house. These videos confirmed the description of the mysterious person seen in the original driveway footage, providing a clear consistency in the suspect's appearance. After analyzing the recorded times of the videos, detectives suspected that the person on the bike was the same individual seen in Rebecca's driveway footage. Although Rebecca's neighbor's security camera didn't capture footage of the mysterious person on the night of her murder, officers found footage of someone on a bike riding towards Rebecca's house just before and after the incident. This person matched the description of the individual seen lurking in Rebecca's driveway in the days leading up to her murder. While the video evidence was helpful in the investigation, its poor quality limited the information it provided. The detectives couldn't identify the person in the video due to the grainy image, making it difficult to determine their gender. However, they did notice one distinctive feature. The bike had no reflectors on its wheels. When Rebecca's sister heard that she was murdered, only one person came to mind as a suspect: Rebecca's estranged husband, Tim. Rebecca's sister, who had a first-hand account of the contentious divorce between Rebecca and Tim, shared this information with the detectives working on her sister's case. The detectives suspected Tim of murdering Rebecca, especially since her murder happened just a week before their divorce was due to be finalized. During the investigation, they made a crucial discovery: a bike with no reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on security footage, was found just a block from Tim's house. This discovery increased the suspicion surrounding Tim, leading the detectives to obtain a search warrant for his home. When the police executed the warrant, Tim cooperated fully, standing outside his home with the officers as they searched his belongings. On March 13, 2023, 2 weeks after Rebecca's murder, Tim was arrested and charged with her murder. When his mugshot was released, Rebecca's family and friends were shocked by his appearance, which was very different from the clean-cut man they had known. Tim's friends and family were shocked by his disheveled appearance, which they attributed to the emotional toll of his recent divorce. His once neat and tidy hair was now unkempt, and his clothes were messy. They speculated that the divorce had affected not only his physical appearance, but also his mental well-being. However, Tim had a surprising explanation for his changed look. He revealed that he was growing his hair out to support a charity campaign for cancer research. Despite this, a viral video clip showed Tim's appearance on Family Feud, where he made a bizarre statement about regretting his marriage, which took on a disturbing tone after he was arrested for murdering his wife. Many people believed that Tim's comment on Family Feud was a strange and unsettling prediction of what would eventually happen. They thought it showed that he had hidden feelings about his wife and was a sign that something bad was happening in their relationship. When the police looked into Tim's phone, they found that he had made a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During their investigation, they discovered that Tim had been searching for a specific type of bicycle on Facebook, a blue Schwinn bike with no reflectors on the wheels. This was an important discovery because it matched the description of a bike that was found abandoned just 1 block away from Tim's house. Despite having strong evidence against Tim, the detectives faced a significant obstacle when they arrested him. Tim was held in jail without the possibility of bail, but he requested a quick trial, which is his right under the law. Prosecutors were required to bring the matter to trial within 90 days of Tim's arrest. The prosecution faced a significant challenge in convincing a jury, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Tim murdered Rebecca due to the absence of a confession or DNA evidence. Juries typically look for these 2 key elements in criminal cases. To prove Tim's guilt in the murder of his wife Rebecca, the prosecution faced a significant challenge. Exactly 3 months after Rebecca's tragic murder in her home, Tim's trial began on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the prosecution presented several key pieces of evidence found at the crime scene. One notable piece of evidence was the shredded plastic fragments discovered around Rebecca's body. The prosecution argued that these fragments came from an owl's grocery bag. Further investigation revealed that similar bags were found in Tim's house. The prosecution alleged that Tim used these bags as a makeshift silencer when he shot his estranged wife multiple times. They claimed that the bags were used to muffle the sound of the gunfire, preventing it from being heard by others. The prosecution also presented DNA evidence, suggesting that Tim left behind DNA while using the Aldi bags. An expert testified that it was highly likely Tim contributed to the DNA found, and that his DNA could not be ruled out as a match for the DNA found under Rebecca's fingernails. The prosecution presented evidence suggesting that a crowbar found in Tim's basement might have been used to force open the window at the victim's house on the night of the murder. Although an expert testified that there were microscopic similarities between the crowbar and the window's pry mark, she couldn't conclusively say that the crowbar was involved. To build a stronger case, the prosecution presented records of several searches made on Tim's phone, including how to open my door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, how to clean gunpowder off your hands, and average police response time in Quinny. The prosecution's expert witness testified that she compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to those found at Tim's house during the investigation. Her analysis revealed that 27 of the casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used to kill Rebecca. When investigators searched Tim's house, they didn't find Rebecca's 9mm gun, which he had refused to return to her. Tim claimed he hadn't seen the gun in months before Rebecca's murder. During the trial, the defense had the opportunity to call witnesses, but chose not to. After the 6-day trial, the jury took 4 hours to reach a guilty verdict, and Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Despite claiming innocence and planning to appeal, Tim is behind bars, and Rebecca's family believes justice has been served. During the sentencing hearing, Rebecca's family read impact statements. One of her sisters addressed Tim, telling him how his actions affected his son's well-being. She stressed that his choices were causing his sons to suffer. Rebecca's sister vowed to keep her memory alive for her 3 sons, even after her passing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Pam Hupp. Pam Hupp was born on October 20th, 1958 in Delwood, Missouri. As the second child of the Newman family, she married Mark Hupp and they had 2 children together. In 2001, the family moved to Fallon, Missouri. Pam had a varied work history, including a job as a life administrator at State Farm until 2010, when she stopped working due to disability claims related to leg and back pain. Despite some past legal issues, including 2 charges of forgery, Pam's acquaintances would never have suspected her of being capable of murder. However, on August 16, 2016, Pam shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger, a mentally challenged man who had been struggling with physical and mental disabilities since a 2005 car accident. Pam claimed that Louis had attacked her with a knife after jumping out of a passing vehicle, and that she had defended herself by slapping the knife away and then shooting him 5 times with her Ruger LCR, which she retrieved from her nightstand. However, this account of events seems suspicious, and it is uncertain what really happened that day. Pam accused Louis of instructing her to drive him to the bank to withdraw money belonging to Russ Farrier, a man wrongly convicted of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. According to Pam, Louis became agitated and excited, saying, "We're going to the bank. We're getting Russ's money." However, evidence later revealed that Louis's true intention was to have Louis Gumpenberger attack and kill Pam. A handwritten note found at the crime scene contained instructions for Gumpenberger. First, he was to obtain Russ's money from Pam's apartment. Next, he was to kill Pam and make it look like Russ's wife was responsible. The note included gruesome details, such as ensuring the knife was left sticking out of Pam's neck. The perpetrator was willing to pay Gumpenberger a large sum of money for carrying out this heinous act. Pam Hupp was arrested for the murder of Lou Gumenberger. However, a question arose. Was Gumenberger a hired assassin, or did Pam manipulate him, using a mentally disabled man as a scapegoat? The truth began to unravel when Pam went to the O'Fallon Police Department voluntarily. During her interview, Pam asked if it would be recorded, mentioning that she normally appeared with Chris Hayes, a KTVI news reporter. She even blamed Hayes for attracting criminals through his reporting. Pam had a history of pretending to be Kathy, a producer of an NBC TV show. According to the O'Fallon police chief and the St. Charles County prosecutor, Pam used this persona to lure Gumenberger into her home, where she tricked him into recreating a 911 call, providing a cover for the brutal crime she was about to commit. After killing Gumenberger, Pam Hupp planted evidence to incriminate herself, including writing a note found on his body. The police had a strong case against her due to the overwhelming evidence they uncovered. They found $9 bills on Gumenberger's body, which Pam had placed there. The 10th $9 bill was later discovered in her dresser, and its serial number matched 3 of the $100 bills, also found on Gumenberger. Pam Hupp was arrested on August 23, 2016, and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. When she requested to use the restroom on the day of her arrest, she attempted to commit suicide by stabbing her wrist and neck with a ballpoint pen. Fortunately, she did not succeed. On January 30, 2017, Pam appeared in court for the first time. The prosecutor, Phil Groyne, argued that her actions demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. A grand jury convicted her of all charges. In December 2016, her bail was set at $2 million. Pam's trial began in 2017, during which she pleaded not guilty, prompting the prosecutor to pursue the death penalty. The prosecutor's reasoning was that Pam had seemingly chosen her victim, Gumenberger, at random. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea, which allowed her to plead guilty while maintaining her innocence. This move nullified the death penalty charge and led to a jury trial being cancelled. As a result, Pam was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. Following her sentencing, she called her then-husband Matt Hupp and explained that she had confessed to killing Louis Gumenberger to avoid putting their family through a lengthy and distressing trial. During the trial, disturbing facts about Pam's past came to light, shocking the police, judges, and the public. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that evidence related to the brutal murder of Betsy Farrier could be presented in court. This ruling led to the reopening of the Betsy Farrier case. Betsy, born Elizabeth Farrier, worked with Pam at State Farm as a life insurance administrator and lived in Troy, Missouri, with her husband Russ Farrier and 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Betsy was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. In October 2011, she discovered that the cancer had spread to her liver and she only had a few months left to live. Sadly, she passed away on December 22, 2011. Before her death, Betsy changed the beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy from her husband to Pam Huff, without informing her husband or daughters. Pam claimed that Betsy had instructed her to set up a trust fund for her daughters, but later alleged that Betsy wanted her to keep the money because they had a romantic relationship. Betsy's daughters took Pam to court in 2014, trying to reclaim their mother's life insurance fund. However, their case was dismissed in 2016. In the same year, Russ, Betsy's husband, sued State Farm. On December 27, 2011, just 5 days after making Pam the beneficiary of her life insurance policy, Betsy attended a chemotherapy session at the Alvin J. Sitman Cancer Center. Weakened from the treatment, she went to her mother's house, where it was agreed that Russ would pick her up, or she would stay overnight. However, Pam unexpectedly showed up and insisted on driving Betsy home, claiming to have dropped her off around 7 p.m. Betsy's daughter reported that her mother didn't answer her call at around 7:21 p.m. Later, at 9:40 p.m., Russ, Betsy's husband, desperately called 911 to report that his wife had taken her own life. However, Russ had been at his friend Michael Corbin's house, watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Afterward, he drove to Arby's Lake in St. Louis before returning home. When the emergency responders arrived about 10 minutes after Russ's call, they quickly realized that Betsy's death was not a suicide. Her body was found lying on her right side, with 55 stab wounds and a deep cut on her wrist. A kitchen knife was lodged in her neck, and another knife was discovered under her pillow. Notably, there were no bloodstains or footprints around the entrance of the house. The investigation determined that Betsy died between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Suspicion immediately fell on Russ Farrier, who became the prime suspect. The authorities believed he had a motive, as his wife had refused to give him access to $150,000. Russ was arrested and charged with his wife's murder, while the real killer remained at large. Russ Farrier was arrested the day after Betsy's death. He became the prime suspect due to his 911 call, in which he claimed her death was a suicide. However, a glance at the body immediately ruled out this possibility. Additionally, a pair of blood-stained slippers were discovered in his closet, incriminating evidence against him. Russ was subsequently charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action in court in January 2012, just a day after his wife's funeral. The investigation revealed more damning evidence against Russ. He performed poorly on a polygraph test, leading police to regard his behavior as suspicious and erratic. Furthermore, at Pam's request, the police searched Betsy's laptop and found a disturbing Word document in which she expressed her fear of losing her life at the hands of her husband. Russ was held on a $250,000 bail, which he couldn't afford, so he was kept in county jail until his trial on November 18, 2013. During police questioning, Pam revealed that Russ had a history of violence, heavy drinking, and had previously threatened Betsy, making it easy to suspect him of the murder. The prosecution argued that Russ had a strong motive to kill his wife. She had received a large sum of $150,000 for her friend, bypassing him in the process. According to Judge Christina Menem, this motive was enough to implicate Russ. At the trial, Russ's lawyer, Joel Schwartz, defended his client's innocence. Schwartz claimed that Russ had spent most of the night with friends who corroborated his alibi. Additionally, Russ had purchased food at a store that evening, which made it physically impossible for him to stab his wife 55 times within the given time frame. Furthermore, there were no bloodstains on his clothes or body. The prosecutor countered that Russ's friends might have been involved in the crime and had lied about his whereabouts that night. The prosecutor suggested that Russ's friends had accompanied him to buy food at ABY and stage an alibi. The presiding judge, Christina Menem, refused to allow Joel Schwartz to present crucial evidence that implicated Pam as an alternative suspect. This evidence included phone records showing Pam was still near Betsy's apartment 30 minutes after she claimed to have left, as well as the fact that Betsy had made Parry of a $150,000 life insurance policy just 5 days before her death. Despite Pam having a clear motive, the judge chose to ignore it. In a closed hearing, Pam claimed to have put $100,000 of the insurance money into a trust fund for Betsy's daughters. However, in a later civil deposition, she admitted to keeping the money for herself, stating that she didn't want her daughters, mother, or sisters to have it. Meanwhile, Detective Mike Merkel of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office reported that a crime scene camera had malfunctioned, resulting in important photographs being unable to be developed. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Russ was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action in November 2013. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for 30 years. Before Farrier's second trial, Attorney Schwartz finally obtained the photos that showed no blood trail. To this day, I've tried to identify who in the prosecutor's office sent me those photos, but I've been unsuccessful. Fox 2 News was present in the courtroom when Schwartz dramatically revealed that he had uncovered evidence that police and prosecutors had been hiding. After this, Russ was transferred to the Jefferson City Correctional Center, a welcome development for Pam's sister Betsy. During the trial, Russ's wife testified that he had once pressed a pillow against her face, whispering, "This is what it feels like to die," because she had removed him from her insurance policy. Schwartz pointed out that this story originally came from Pam, but the judge ignored this. Throughout the trial, Russ's friends were falsely accused of being accessories to murder, thanks to the prosecutor's closing speech. Fortunately, no charges were brought against them, even though Russ spent nearly 4 years in prison. In February 2015, attorney Joel Schwartz appealed Russ's conviction. However, back in 2013, Judge Christina Menem had already rejected Schwartz's request to review the case. In 2014, KTVI and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch revisited the case, uncovering some suspicious facts about Betsy's death and her true killer. Their investigation found that Pam Hupp had given contradictory statements to the police, including a false claim that she had left the Farrier residence immediately after dropping Betsy off. The Farrier murder case was marred by controversy and deceit. A police officer recalled being shocked that nobody suspected Pam, with everyone focusing on Russ instead. A 911 operator testified that Russ seemed genuinely shocked and agitated during their call. However, 2 jurors revealed that crucial information had been withheld from them, raising questions about why the sheriff's department would deliberately hide evidence that favored Russ. The media uncovered a disturbing web of relationships between the prosecuting attorney, ASI, and key figures in the case, including the captain of investigations and a lead investigator. This information led to Russ's retrial in February 2015. The Missouri Court of Appeal transferred the case back to the 45th Circuit Court, where a new judge, Stephen R., took over. He granted a new bench trial due to new evidence and released Russ on bond pending the trial. During the retrial, Russ was allowed to present incriminating evidence against Pam. Some police officers admitted that Pam had told them she saw Russ with another man in a car while she was dropping off Betsy. The CSI agent who handled the crime scene believed that Russ's blood-stained slippers were a setup, and that the blood stain was not from stepping in blood. Russ was acquitted of all charges and released on November 7, 2015. He later filed a lawsuit against ASI and 3 deputy sheriffs for ignoring exonerating evidence and fabricating evidence. In 2020, he was awarded a $2 million settlement. The case also led to repercussions for the officials involved. ASI faced a bar complaint, although it was rejected. She later announced that she was willing to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Lincoln County Commissioner to review her conduct. Judge Christina Menem was suspended for misconduct in a different case and was voted out of office in 2018 for her role in the Farrier murder case. In 2019, Lincoln County appointed a new attorney, Mike Wood, who reopened the Betsy Farrier murder case. He confessed that the wrongful conviction of Russ had inspired him to take the job. Pam was eventually interrogated as a suspect in the murder and was charged with first-degree murder. The new prosecutor, Wood, sought the death penalty due to the heinousness of the crime. Betsy Farrier was brutally murdered, stabbed 55 times, and her wrist was almost completely severed. Detective Mike Wood condemned the act as animalistic and charged Pam Hupp with the crime. Wood had strong evidence against Pam, including a $150,000 life insurance policy that named her as the beneficiary just days before Betsy's death. Pam had promised to put the money in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter, but instead kept it for herself, claiming that Betsy had wanted her to have it. In an interview, Pam claimed that she and Betsy were lovers, but Wood believed she was lying. Pam had also loaned her son $120,000 from her company in 2021, contradicting her earlier claims. Wood was convinced that Pam murdered Betsy by stabbing her with a kitchen knife while she slept on the sofa. He believed Pam tried to make it look like a domestic violence incident, by walking around the room with socks on. The evidence against Pam included a text message she sent to Betsy's phone at 7:20 p.m. claiming she was home, but her call records showed she was still at the Faria residence. The fact that Betsy was found lying on her side suggested to Wood that she was killed by someone she trusted. Pam pleaded not guilty of the crime, but her trial was delayed multiple times due to her attorney's death and other issues. Finally, in 2023, the trial was scheduled to start in 2025. Wood was not only determined to bring Pam to justice, but also criticized the Lincoln County prosecutors for mismanaging the case and showing bias against Russ Faria, Betsy's husband. He pointed out a 2015 destruction order that could have led to the destruction of evidence, which would have made it impossible for Russ to be released from prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh attempted to follow in his family's footsteps by pursuing a law degree from the University of North Carolina, where he met his future wife, Margaret Maggie Branton. They started dating in 1991 and got married 2 years later, on August 14, 1993, at the Second Presbyterian Church in South Carolina. Alex and Maggie had 2 sons, Richard Buster Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh. Alex joined his family's law firm, PMPD, as a personal injury attorney, aiming to continue his family's legacy. However, unlike his ancestors, Alex misused the power and influence his family's firm provided, covering up financial crimes, theft, and possibly even murder. For over a decade, Alex's dishonest dealings went unnoticed until his youngest son, Paul, was involved in a fatal boating accident. This incident was the latest in a series of suspicious deaths surrounding the Murdaugh family, leading people to speculate that these accidents were not coincidental and were instead part of a larger cover-up, given the family's history and resources. Here's what happened on February 23, 2019. Paul Murdaugh, fresh out of high school, took his family's boat to Pookas Island for a party with friends. The group, including his girlfriend Morgan Dowie, Anthony Cook, and Miley Allman, wanted an unsupervised night of fun. They planned a house party and oyster roast on the island. To make the night complete, Paul used his older brother's ID to buy beer and hard liquor. They left the Murdaugh River House around 7 p.m. and continued partying until midnight. Feeling restless, Paul suggested driving the boat to downtown Beaufort, where he and his friend Connor had 2 rounds of shots at around 1 a.m. As they headed back to the boat, a surveillance camera caught a tender moment between Anthony and Mallory. Paul, who was heavily intoxicated, started acting strangely on a boat ride with friends. At 1:15 a.m., the group got back on the water, but things quickly spiraled out of control. Paul drove the boat in circles, showing signs of intoxication, and got into an argument with the others. Anthony wanted to get out on a nearby rock, but Paul refused. GPS footage later showed that the boat's speed increased at some point. Although Paul denied deliberately speeding up, he was in control of the wheel. The boat crashed into Arrow Creek Bridge at 2:20 a.m., throwing Mallory into the water. The others were severely injured. Connor broke his jaw, and Morgan's hand was badly hurt. Connor called 911, and help arrived soon after. When the deputy sheriff arrived, he saw blood in the main compartment and a large split in the hull from the impact. All the teenagers involved were extremely drunk, and everyone except Anthony required hospital treatment. Paul refused treatment despite being extremely agitated and having a blood alcohol level of 0.243, significantly higher than the legal limit. The search for Mallory's body took 8 days, and she was found to have died from a combination of blunt force trauma to the head and drowning. Despite multiple eyewitnesses stating that Paul was out of control while driving the boat, he was not arrested or charged. This led to rumors that Alex Murdaugh had used his influence to protect his son from justice. In March 2019, the Murdaugh family was served with a wrongful death lawsuit. Mallory's family alleged that Paul's mother, Maggie, was aware that her son was drunk when they went boating and that Buster had helped them obtain fake IDs to buy alcohol. Paul was finally charged with 3 felonies on April 18, 2019, but he never made it to court because he died before his trial. A series of mysterious deaths have been linked to the Murdaugh family. One incident involved Stephen Smith, a gay teenager, who was found dead on July 8, 2015. His official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and it was initially ruled a hit-and-run incident with no suspect arrested. However, Stephen's mother believed he was the victim of a hate crime. There were rumors that Stephen was in a relationship with Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, and that Buster might have been involved in Stephen's death. Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh family's longtime housekeeper, died on February 26, 2018, due to complications from a severe head injury. Alex Murdaugh claimed that his dogs had caused her to trip and fall, but there was no autopsy to confirm this account. The case was reopened on March 22, 2023, and it was revealed that Gloria's death was actually a murder, although no suspects have been named. Alex Murdaugh's family was involved in a wrongful death lawsuit after his housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, died in 2018. The lawsuit resulted in a $4.3 million insurance policy settlement, but the money never reached Satterfield's sons. Instead, Murdaugh allegedly conspired with his friend Corey Fleming, a lawyer and godfather to one of Murdaugh's sons, to steal the payout. The money was diverted to Murdaugh's bank account, and the Satterfield family was never notified. Satterfield's sons filed a new civil lawsuit against Murdaugh in September 2021. On the same day, state investigators opened a criminal investigation into Satterfield's death, citing inconsistencies in the coroner's report. The Satterfield family allowed authorities to exhume Satterfield's body for further investigation. Meanwhile, Murdaugh was facing numerous financial and embezzlement charges. He was allegedly involved in a money laundering and painkiller ring with his distant cousin Curtis Smith, which lasted from 2013 to 2021. On September 4, 2021, Murdaugh orchestrated a scheme in which Smith shot him in an attempt to collect a $10 million life insurance policy. However, the bullet only caused superficial injuries, and Murdaugh was able to call 911 himself. Days later, Murdaugh confessed to the scheme and was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. He surrendered himself and was taken into custody. 2 days later, he announced his resignation from his family's law firm and entered rehab. However, it was soon revealed that Murdaugh had misappropriated $792,000 from his law firm. His law license was indefinitely suspended in September 2021. Investigators continued to uncover numerous financial crimes, tax evasions, and embezzlements committed by Murdaugh. After leaving rehab, Murdaugh was arrested again and charged with 2 felony counts of obtaining property by false pretenses. He was denied bond and later indicted on 27 counts of financial misconduct, accused of stealing money from clients, lawyers, and the Satterfield family. Alex Murdaugh faced additional charges on December 9, 2021, with 21 new counts added to the existing 27, bringing the total to 48. The charges included forgery, money laundering, computer crimes, breach of trust, and obtaining signature or property by false pretenses. It was estimated that Murdaugh had stolen over $6.2 million from his victims. The state's investigation into his business dealings took months, with new charges emerging almost daily. By June 2022, the charges against him had risen to 81, and by the time he was formally disbarred on July 13, 2022, he faced 84 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits. One of the victims' mothers filed a legal claim against the estates of Margaret and Paul Murdaugh, raising questions about the character of the once prominent attorney. Could he be hiding something even more sinister, such as the murder of his wife and son? What could have been his motive? The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLAD, revisited the double murder case, considering new information gathered during the investigation into Murdoch's financial crimes. They discovered that Alex and Maggie Murdoch's marriage was troubled, and Maggie was living apart from her husband at their beach home on Edisto Island. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, told law enforcement that Maggie had not planned to see Alex on the night of the murders. Alex had asked Maggie to meet him at the family's hunting lodge, where she and her younger son were later found shot dead near the dog kennels. Alex claimed to have taken a long nap before leaving to visit his ailing mother, who suffered from dementia. He stated that he was away for 45 minutes to an hour and a half and found his wife and son dead upon his return. However, law enforcement suspected that Alex's timeline was questionable and lacked a clear motive for the murders. The investigation revealed that weeks before the murder, the state grand jury had subpoenaed Alex Murdoch's finances, which threatened to expose his financial wrongdoings. Additionally, his law firm had discovered his misappropriation of company funds, and he was confronted about it on June 7, 2021, the day of the murder. State authorities believed that the financial pressure had pushed Alex to hatch a plan to divert attention from his crimes and garner sympathy in the public eye. 13 months after the fatal shooting, Alex Murdoch was charged with the murders of his wife and son. The prosecutor alleged that Murdoch had shot and killed his wife and son at close range with a shotgun and an AR-style rifle. The murder weapons were never found. Murdoch's defense team argued that two shooters were involved due to the different weapons used. Expert witness testimony suggested that the shooter was likely between 5'2" and 5'4" tall, which ruled out Alex Murdoch as a suspect due to his 6'4" height. However, under cross-examination, the expert admitted that there were other possible explanations for the bullet trajectory beyond the shooter's height. The investigation revealed that Maggie was shot with 300 blackout ammunition from an AR-style rifle, and a box of this ammo was found at the Murdoch family estate. Prosecutors argued that Alex killed his wife and son to gain sympathy and avoid accountability for his financial crimes. Alex's lawyers countered that this didn't make sense, as it would only shift attention to himself and put him in the spotlight of a murder investigation. Alex was a person of interest from the start of the investigation, but his lawyer claimed he had an ironclad alibi for the night of the murders and no motive to kill his family. Prosecutors presented two videos taken on the night of the murder, which appeared to show Alex wearing different shirts. The Snapchat video taken from Paul's phone showed Alex wearing a blue shirt, while the body cam footage showed him wearing a different shirt. Investigators couldn't find the blue shirt, and prosecutors suggested Alex tried to influence a key witness's account of what he was wearing. Cell phone data and testimony from Alex's mother's caregiver confirmed that Alex was only at his mother's home for 15 to 20 minutes, contradicting his claim of staying for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. The most crucial piece of evidence was a video found on Paul's phone, recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before the murders. The video featured the voices of Paul, Maggie, and Alex, placing Alex at the scene of the crime. This contradicted his previous alibi and confirmed his presence at the dog kennels where the murders occurred. Alex testified that he didn't shoot his wife or son, but admitted to lying about his alibi. Alex Murdoch changed his story, claiming that his opioid addiction and resulting paranoia led him to lie to law enforcement. However, prosecutors argued that Murdoch fabricated this excuse after murdering his wife and son. They believed he used his wife's phone to create an alibi by making calls and sending texts, including "Call me, babe," at 9:47 p.m. Phone data showed that Murdoch's and his wife's phones locked simultaneously, and Alex's phone recorded a sudden increase in steps around the time of the murder. Prosecutors suggested this was evidence of him trying to hide or dispose of evidence, but his lawyers disputed this, pointing out that the step patterns on Alex's phone did not match his wife's. The decisive evidence came from a video recorded at the dog kennels. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury found Murdaugh guilty on all counts on March 2, 2023. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Additionally, he received a 5-year sentence for possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Murdaugh pleaded guilty to 22 financial crimes as part of a deal, but maintains his innocence in the murders. He appealed his conviction on March 9, 2023. In a surprise move, his lawyers filed a motion for a new trial, alleging that Rebecca Hill, a court clerk, had engaged in jury tampering. Hill denies the allegations, which include advising jurors to disregard Murdaugh's testimony and other defense evidence, pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and misrepresenting critical information to the trial judge. A hearing is scheduled for Murdaugh's lawyers to present evidence and witnesses to support their claim. However, a judge has not yet been assigned to preside over the hearing. With over 100 financial and drug crime charges pending, as well as multiple lawsuits, it is clear that the Alex Murdaugh case is far from over. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Brooke Skylar Richardson. In Ohio, the Richardson family, consisting of Kim, Scott, and their children, Jackson and Skylar, seemed like a typical family. Skylar was a cheerleader who struggled with an eating disorder from a young age. Her mother Kim first noticed this when Skylar was 12 years old and refused to buy gum with more than 5 calories. As a flyer on the cheerleading squad, Skylar felt pressured to maintain a certain weight. This obsession with her body image led to a constant fear of gaining weight. During cheerleading season, Skylar started throwing up after meals to control her weight, which only made her issues worse. When the season ended, her struggles intensified. Skylar experienced episodes of binge eating, followed by periods of starvation or extreme dieting. Her parents grew concerned, but Skylar shut down whenever they tried to talk to her about it. They sought professional help from various doctors and therapists, who eventually diagnosed Skylar with body dysmorphia, a condition where she obsessively focused on a perceived flaw in her appearance. In July 2016, Skylar began dating a friend's cousin, but the relationship didn't last long. By January 2017, she had moved on to a new boyfriend, Brandon, and seemed genuinely happy and healthy. Her parents noticed her weight gain and thought her eating disorder was under control. In February, Skylar picked out her prom dress, a tightly fitted gown that required her to be laced into it. During a family vacation in mid-March, she wore a 2-piece bathing suit and looked wonderful. Her mom, Kim, wanted her to start taking birth control pills to protect her health. In mid-April 2017, Skylar visited her mother's gynecologist to obtain a prescription for birth control. However, during the visit, the doctor informed Skylar that she was approximately 8 months pregnant. Skylar requested the doctor not to tell anyone, and her mother remained unaware of the real reason behind her tears. Skylar and her boyfriend Brandon attended the prom on May 5th, despite her advanced pregnancy. 2 months later, on July 14, 2017, the police showed up at the Richardson home. They informed Skylar's parents, Kim and Scott, that they needed to speak to the teenager about something she may have witnessed. The police officers assured the parents that Skylar was not in trouble and took her at their word. Scott decided to drive Skylar to the police station, unsure of what awaited them. The police wanted to question Skylar regarding a call they received from a gynecologist's office. A patient of an OB/GYN doctor gave birth to a stillborn baby and buried it in their backyard. The police were informed and took Skylar, the patient, into custody for questioning. Her father was not allowed to be present during the initial interview. The police read Skylar her rights and shared the details of the doctor's report. According to the doctor, Skylar had discovered her pregnancy on April 26th, but later reported that the baby was not alive and had been buried in the backyard. Skylar admitted to the police that she had given birth to a stillborn baby girl on May 7th, 2017. She explained that she delivered the baby in the bathroom, noticed it was not breathing, and had no heartbeat. Feeling the need to bury the baby, she retreated to the backyard, dug a shallow grave, and buried the body. To mark the spot, she placed a vase with a flower at the burial site. The police informed Skylar's parents, Kim and Scott, about the true reason for her detention. They were shocked to learn that Skylar had been pregnant, as they had no idea. They expressed sadness that Skylar had gone through this ordeal alone and without their support. Skylar revealed that she had named the baby Annabelle and claimed the father was a close friend's cousin, whom she briefly dated. Crime scene investigators searched the Richardson backyard, removing weeds and debris to uncover the baby's remains. Despite the challenges, they found several bones, including pieces of the skull, which they carefully collected and preserved. After more than 5 hours of questioning, Skylar and her parents were allowed to return home. However, 6 days later, the police contacted Skylar again, informing her that they had received new information from the coroner's office. They claimed that the baby's bones showed signs of burning, which Skylar vehemently denied. She insisted that she would never harm her child. The police suggested that Skylar might have tried to cremate the baby to hide the evidence, but she continued to deny any wrongdoing. However, Skylar suddenly changed her story, admitting that she may have used a lighter to try and cremate the baby's remains. She also stated that the baby might have been born alive and made a noise or even cried before dying. Skylar confessed to holding the newborn too tightly, which might have contributed to its death. During a lengthy interrogation, the police gathered enough evidence to arrest Skylar on a charge of reckless homicide. They believed she had suffocated her baby. After presenting the case to a grand jury, Skylar was indicted and arrested for aggravated murder, which carries a mandatory life sentence in Ohio. At her arraignment, Skylar pleaded not guilty to additional charges of voluntary manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, and endangering children. She spent the weekend in jail until her family secured a $50,000 bond. Skylar became the center of a media frenzy following her child's tragic death. The public judged and scrutinized every move she and her family made, taking a toll on their well-being. They retreated to the safety of their home, but even stepping outside became difficult due to threats and photographers. Despite her defense attorneys believing Skylar gave a false confession, the prosecution pressed forward with their case. Even when the medical examiner retracted her initial report of burning, the prosecution clung to Skylar's admission that she had attempted to cremate the remains. Throughout this period, Skylar's family endured immense stress and fear. The public scrutiny and threats made their lives unbearable, and they struggled to navigate a world under constant scrutiny. Skylar's defense attorneys worked tirelessly to defend her against the charges. Skylar's family raised the $50,000 bail, but as a condition of her release, she was ordered to wear an ankle bracelet. She remained confined to her home, avoiding public appearances. Over 12 months, Skylar's life took a different path. Her university plans were put on hold as she awaited trial for her baby's murder. The charges were serious, and the defense filed a motion to move the trial to a different county, but it was denied. Skylar faced the trial in the original jurisdiction, grappling with the emotional and psychological impact of the allegations and her isolation. Spending time with her dogs provided comfort and companionship as she awaited her trial. Her family stood by her, believing in her innocence and hoping the truth would come to light. Despite the challenges, Skylar remained determined to fight for her freedom. In July 2019, the state offered a plea deal. If Skylar pleaded guilty to the remaining charges, they would withdraw the aggravated murder charge. Skylar's parents were conflicted about the decision, but after careful consideration, Skylar turned down the plea deal. This decision terrified her parents, who wondered if she made the right choice, but they knew it was her decision, not theirs. Skylar went on trial on September 3, 2019, for the murder of her newborn baby girl. The prosecution presented as evidence a text message Skylar sent to her mother shortly after giving birth, saying she was happy and excited that her belly had returned to its normal size. They claimed this showed Skylar was relieved to be rid of her baby. The prosecution alleged that Skylar sent more texts to her mother and boyfriend within 24 hours of the baby's death, conveying her excitement and happiness. They pointed to phrases like, "I'm so excited," and "I feel so much better this morning," as proof of her guilt. The state believed Skylar was thrilled about the baby's death and attempted to hide her guilt. The prosecution also claimed Skylar had no intention of keeping her baby and presented evidence that she had searched online for ways to get rid of the baby. They alleged that Skylar's mother had threatened that her life would end if she became pregnant, which instilled fear in Skylar. On the third day of the trial, a doctor testified that the baby's death was a violent homicide, but admitted she couldn't determine when the baby's skull fractures occurred. The defense challenged the doctor's findings, suggesting she may have been biased. The defense also questioned the doctor's methods, pointing out that she didn't examine the remains under a microscope or consult with an obstetrician. Another doctor, a fetal medicine specialist, testified that it was unlikely the baby was stillborn, citing Skylar's admission that she felt the baby moving inside her. The prosecution's case included shocking evidence, including images of the deceased baby's remains, which visibly affected Skylar during the trial. Skylar's reaction to seeing pictures of her baby's remains was to stare straight ahead, avoiding eye contact. This stoic behavior contrasted with her emotional response the previous day when the judge entered the room. Skylar's defense attorneys argued that her life was far from perfect, even before the murder accusation. They claimed the prosecution's evidence was incomplete and misleading, and some texts were taken out of context. They emphasized that Skylar's frequent use of certain language did not prove she murdered her daughter. The defense highlighted Skylar's mental health struggles, particularly her long battle with an eating disorder. They presented evidence of her regular visits to a psychologist and nutritionist, along with pictures showing her varying weights and appearances. They argued that despite her physical state, Skylar tried to comfort and care for the lifeless body after giving birth. Skylar's attorney explained that she intended to tell her family about the pregnancy, but never had the chance. According to her doctor, she had 8 to 10 weeks before delivery and planned to attend prom and graduate before telling her mother, whom she knew would be unsupportive. An obstetrician testified that the baby was stillborn, and Skylar's description of the baby's appearance suggested it was not a healthy newborn. The doctor pointed out that Skylar only gained 15 pounds during pregnancy, possibly restricting the baby's development due to her eating disorder. The defense aimed to cast doubt on Skylar's statements to the police, suggesting she only told them what they wanted to hear. They argued that other factors may have contributed to the baby's death, and Skylar did not harm the baby. Skylar Richardson's trial lasted for 1 week, after which the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a verdict. She was acquitted of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment, but convicted of abuse of a corpse, a felony that carries a sentence of up to 1 year in prison. The judge ordered her to be held in jail until her sentencing hearing, which took place the next day. During the sentencing hearing, Skylar apologized for her actions and acknowledged the harm she had caused. The judge strongly admonished her for her role in the tragic loss of her baby, believing that if she had made better decisions during her pregnancy, her child would still be alive today. The judge sentenced her to 3 years probation for abuse of a corpse, emphasizing that her actions were morally reprehensible and illegal. In November 2020, a judge granted her request to terminate her probation 2 years early, acknowledging her progress and agreeing that she no longer required supervision. Since being acquitted, Skylar has taken advantage of her opportunity to demonstrate her rehabilitation. She has completed 2 semesters of college and has been working part-time at the law firm that represented her. Although she has faced challenges in finding employment due to her probationary status, Skylar remains determined to pursue her career goals, including attending law school and becoming a public defender. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cody Johnson. At the age of 23, Cody was looking for a long-term partner. He confided in his friends about his desire to marry a woman who shared his values, specifically someone from a religious background. On Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, who would eventually become a pivotal figure in his life. Born in August 1991, Jordan grew up in Kalispell in a deeply religious family. She attended the Faith Baptist Church, where she worked with children and families, and her ultimate goal was to become a stay-at-home mother. When Cody and Jordan first met on Halloween, they quickly formed a connection. Although initially shy, Jordan opened up to Cody about her dreams of starting a family and her love for nature. Cody was smitten, but Jordan, who was only 20 at the time, was not ready for a serious relationship. They went on a few casual dates, but maintained a platonic relationship. However, Cody's feelings for Jordan only intensified, and he made a concerted effort to win her over. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began to socialize with her friends and community. Before long, their friendship blossomed into something more. Cody and Jordan officially started dating in November 2011, and Cody became completely enamored with her, wanting to spend all his time with her. Cody was convinced he wanted to marry Jordan just weeks into their relationship, despite her desire to remain chaste until marriage. Those close to they noticed Jordan didn't seem as invested in Cody as he was in her. While some attributed this to her shy nature, others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They rarely showed affection in public, didn't hold hands, and didn't flirt. So, when Cody proposed in December 2012, many of Jordan's friends were surprised she accepted. They thought she wasn't ready for marriage after just a year of dating, but they were happy for her. Jordan eagerly shared her engagement ring on Instagram, captioning the post, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was set for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, along with Jordan's best friend and matron of honor, Kimberly Martinez. However, it was Jordan who seemed most enthusiastic about the wedding planning, even going so far as to perform a song with custom-written lyrics by Elizabeth Shee, which would later seem eerily prophetic. When someone, including Kimberly, brought up the idea of actually being married to Cody, Jordan's mood would quickly deteriorate. She repeatedly questioned Kimberly, her matron of honor, about whether she was making the right decision. On her wedding day, Jordan's true feelings about the marriage were evident. She was anxious and avoided eye contact with Cody, frequently looking down. Despite regaining her composure for the wedding photos and first dance, Jordan's unease persisted. The morning after the wedding, Jordan confided in a friend via text from their honeymoon hotel room. She revealed that she had not consummated the marriage and had rejected Cody's advances, not only on their wedding night, but for the next 6 nights as well. Jordan was anxious about Cody's expectations and didn't want to be intimate. She planned to use the excuse that her period had started, hoping it would work, as she feared being forced into something would cause her to panic. Jordan had an intense fear of sex due to her faith and reservations about Cody, causing her to feel anxious about intimacy with him. This anxiety reached a boiling point on July 7th, 8 days after their wedding, when Cody canceled his golfing trip with friends at the last minute because Jordan had planned a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some time alone on the lake, they had dinner with friends at Dairy Queen. Cody then went home with Jordan, and this was the last time anyone saw him. When Cody failed to show up for work, his co-worker Cameron Fredrickson became concerned. As a reliable and punctual employee, Cody's absence was unusual. Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had purchased with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking with no response, Cameron let himself in and searched the house for any clues about their disappearance. However, he found nothing. Cameron's concern turned to fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. It was unusual for Cody to be without his phone, and this sparked grave concerns. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen Cody since dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report, and the authorities took the case seriously from the start. Officer Chaz Zimmerman, one of the first to question Cameron, was struck by his distress. Zimmerman found it odd that Cameron's boss, not his wife Kimberly, reported him missing. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan, who claimed that Cameron had left with friends in a black car with Washington plates. According to Jordan, Cameron had received a disturbing phone call at the restaurant, so she gave him space. However, that night, Kimberly retrieved her phone charger from their car and discovered a text from Cody. The message stated that Cameron had planned to go for a ride with out-of-town friends who were visiting. Cody was unclear about the friends' identities, but Cameron always took his visiting friends to Glacier Park. Jordan told the police that she didn't recognize the men who were involved in Cody's disappearance, and that they hadn't fought that night. She suggested that Cody might have gone joyriding with his friends from out of town as a possible reason for his disappearance. When questioned about why she didn't report Cody missing, Jordan explained that she didn't want to upset him by filing a report if he was planning to return within a few hours. However, as the hours turned into days, Cody's friends and family gathered at the family home, expressing confusion over his sudden disappearance. It didn't seem like something Cody would do, leaving his wife without a word. Jordan maintained her story until Kimberly confronted her about it. As the conversation continued, Jordan became increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, she became so agitated that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought this was just her unusual way of coping with the situation, Kimberly was convinced that Jordan was hiding something. The next day, she returned home and called her friend. Meanwhile, Jordan was summoned to the police station, where she was confronted by officers about the inconsistencies in her story. One of the officers said, "Jordan, I've gathered information that contradicts what you're telling me. I've spoken to several people, and it's crucial that I know you're being honest." Jordan responded, "I understand, and I think there's more to the story." Around the same time, Sher Johnson met with the police, armed with Cody's phone records from the day he vanished. She was worried about her son and hoped that the mysterious man Cody had called could provide some clues about his disappearance. However, it turned out that the mysterious caller was simply a friend returning a tool to Cody. The police quickly ruled him out as a suspect because he had a solid alibi. His wife was in labor at the time of Cody's disappearance. With all other leads exhausted, the police refocused their attention on Jordan. It was clear that she was hiding something, but her story didn't quite add up. On July 10th, a crucial breakthrough emerged in the case. An unexpected email arrived from Carmen Tony 607, claiming that Cody was dead and there was no need to continue searching. The message read, "Hello, Jordan. My name is Tony. There is no bother looking for Cody anymore. He is gone." Jordan showed the email to Hannah, remaining expressionless as he relayed the news. According to the email, Cody had supposedly died after falling off a cliff in Glacier National Park while with unknown companions. Hannah was devastated upon reading the message and urged Jordan to report it to the police immediately. Hannah recalled her reaction. "I was freaking out, asking what was going on. I read the email and it said Cody was gone." Jordan didn't show any emotion, didn't even cry. She just handed me the email and I started shaking. I told her to go to the police, and she did, but I was rushing her, saying, "Go, move, what are you doing?" Detective Corey Clark was frustrated that the investigation was ongoing, and an anonymous email hadn't provided the closure they needed. In fact, the email seemed suspiciously convenient, at providing the exact information they'd been searching for, and advising them to call off the search. What bothered Clark more than the email's content was Jordan's reaction, or lack thereof. She seemed completely unfazed by the news, which implied her husband's death. Jordan's behavior became even more peculiar when she organized a trip to Glacier National Park with her friends and family to search for Cody. According to Hannah, Jordan was strangely chipper during the entire drive to the park, waving her hand out the window as they went. Despite finding nothing on the first day, they resumed their search on the second day, and it was then that Jordan suddenly claimed to have found Cody's body. Her announcement was met with skepticism. "I think he's down there," she said, leaving Clark wondering why on earth Cody would be in that location. It's baffling that someone would do such a thing. This wall serves a purpose, after all. The autopsy revealed that the victim's head and arms suffered the most damage from the fall. Cody's loved ones were heartbroken over his death, but Jordan felt a sense of relief, according to Hannah. Now that a body had been found, the authorities would finally close the case. However, there was still a major issue. The police had no idea who man Tony 607 was. When Jordan was first questioned about the mysterious message, she directed the police to Tony Stallcup, a fellow car enthusiast and acquaintance of Cody's. Although Tony hadn't seen Cody in several months, he was so worried about him that he gave the police full access to his accounts. The police were unable to find the email address they were looking for, and Jordan and Cody's phone records did not provide much information. As a result, they had to contact Google to obtain the IP address associated with Carmen Tony 607. While waiting for this information, the police re-interviewed Cody's family and friends. During these interviews, Kimberly finally shared with the police Jordan's fragile mental state leading up to her marriage to Cody. She had expressed doubts and fears about marrying him, asking Kimberly multiple times if she should go through with the wedding. Jordan confided in Kimberly about her horror and fear of having sex with Cody, even regretting that Ed had married him and wishing she could undo everything. When Kimberly advised Jordan to be honest with Cody about her feelings, Jordan responded, "I should be happy, but I'm not. If I tell him, it's going to break his heart." 2 days before Cody's disappearance, Jordan typed a disturbing message. "He held me down the other night, and he was in my face." On July 7th, the police discovered another revealing exchange, in which Jordan intended to talk to Cody, but was terrified of his reaction. Jordan went to her friend Kim's house later that day, and recounted her conversation with Cody, which didn't go well. Cody became enraged, and she left to give him space, eventually spending the night at her step-parents' house. When the police learned about this, they became more suspicious of Jordan. Around the same time, they received information from Google that linked the email address Carmen Tony 67 to her stepfather's computer. Although a brief interview with each member of the Graham family suggested Jordan was behind the email, it wasn't conclusive evidence. However, cell phone records and security cameras painted a clearer picture. The records showed that Cody and Jordan's phones were in the vicinity of Glacier National Park on the night of Cody's disappearance. Security cameras even captured them entering the park at 9:17 p.m. Despite Jordan's initial denial of being with Cody that night, the evidence suggested otherwise. On July 18, 2013, the police brought Jordan in for questioning and presented her with the evidence. She broke down in tears and finally revealed her version of events from July 8th. According to Jordan, she confessed her marital doubts to Cody, leading to a massive argument. Jordan and her friend decided to take a trip to Glacier National Park and went to the Loop Trail. Jordan explained what happened next in her own words. If her friend hadn't intervened, Cody would have fallen face first down the hill. The detectives asked her, why did she turn around and push him? Jordan believed it was because her emotions were overwhelming at the time. She felt immense pressure, anger, and every other emotion all at once. The detectives were interested in her comment about a blindfold as they suspected a connection to a stray scarf found near the crime scene. However, Jordan didn't provide any further information, and it was eventually proven to be unrelated. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was an accident and that she didn't plan the assault in any way. Jordan explained that she hadn't planned to kill her husband, Cody. The situation escalated, and in the heat of the moment, she pushed him off the bridge. When asked about the incident, Jordan admitted that Cody had turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she pushed him with both hands. She also confessed to creating a fake identity, Carmen Tony, and sending messages from her stepfather's house. Despite her confession, the police didn't charge Jordan that day, and she walked out of the station a free woman. However, they later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22nd, after she was seen texting on her phone, displaying a lack of respect that eroded any remaining sympathy for her. Rumors circulated that Jordan had killed Cody to escape their marriage without the embarrassment of divorce. Her behavior at the funeral, including texting, seemed to confirm these suspicions, implying that she was more concerned about herself than mourning Cody's death. Jordan's motives were called into question, as people wondered if she ever truly loved Cody. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing the evidence, the jury added premeditated first-degree murder to the list of charges. Her trial began on December 9, 2013. From the start, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's story, raising doubts and inconsistencies. They questioned why she lied to Cody's friends and family, and whether she was truly remorseful or innocent. The prosecution's questioning was relentless, and Jordan's situation looked increasingly dire. The testimonies from Cody's loved ones further damaged Jordan's case, portraying her as a heartless wife who murdered her husband to avoid intimacy. Her defense team attempted to argue self-defense, but it seemed unlikely to succeed. Faced with the possibility of a worse outcome, Jordan opted for a plea deal, accepting a 30-year prison sentence without parole in exchange for the prosecution dropping the first-degree murder charge. Before Jordan was sentenced, she tried to withdraw her guilty plea when she learned the prosecution intended to pursue a charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which carried a maximum 50-year sentence. The decision was up to District Judge Donald Malloy, who had to decide whether to accept her original plea or start a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Judge Malloy sentenced Jordan Lynn Graham to 30 years and 5 months in prison. Despite Jordan's attempt to reverse her plea, her case was not reopened or re-examined. The federal prosecution aimed to set a precedent with her case, sending a message that anyone who commits murder under federal jurisdiction will face swift and severe punishment. As a result, Jordan will not be released from prison until she is over 52 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Savannah Greywind. Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995, in Burke County, North Dakota. Savannah had 2 brothers, Joe and Casey, and a younger sister, Kayla. Her parents, Norberta and Joe, took great pride in their children. The family resided in Fargo, North Dakota, until Savannah was 9 years old, then relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation in 2005. Growing up on the Spirit Lake Reservation, a Native American community in eastern North Dakota, Savannah developed a deep appreciation for nature and animals, particularly horses. It was there that she met Ashton Matheny when she was 15 years old, and they have remained together ever since. When it was time for Savannah and Ashton to pursue higher education, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah secured a job at a nursing home caring for the elderly, began studying to become a nurse, and was preparing to take her certification exam in September. At this point in her life, Savannah was a happy young woman expecting her first child. She and Ashton had found an apartment, paid a deposit, and planned to move into their own home in early September. Meanwhile, Savannah was living with her parents in a basement apartment of a 7-unit, three-story building. Unbeknownst to her, Brooke Cruz, 38, and William Hone, 33, rented an apartment on the third floor of the same building. Brooke Lynn Crew grew up in a neighborhood in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida. Her parents divorced when she was young, leaving Brooke and her 6 siblings to live with their mother. According to her sister, the family had a relatively comfortable life. Brooke underwent significant changes during her teenage years, transforming from a caring girl to a troubled teen. She was shuffled between foster homes, losing contact with her siblings. Brooke was imprisoned in Missouri in 2002 for falsifying documents, then arrested again for parole violation in Texas. She married Carl Crew, a carpenter from Minnesota, at 27, had 2 more children, and worked as an administrative assistant. The marriage ended in divorce in 2009, with the father granted custody of the children. Brooke kept diaries throughout her life, recording tumultuous relationships and self-doubt. Brooke believed Carl had emotionally traumatized her through bullying and belittling. Despite this, she took steps to move forward, studying psychology and joining a dating site, where she met Andrew Murray, a chef from Australia. She relocated to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, Brooke had an argument with her ex-husband over child custody. The situation escalated, and Brooke allegedly attacked him with a knife, leading to her arrest. She fled to Australia using false documents and married Andrew, but their 6-month marriage ended when he discovered her past. After returning to the US, Brooke was involved in a custody battle for her children. She then met William Hone, a 28-year-old convicted of child abuse, and fell in love with him despite his concerning past. Brooke began taking steps towards a fresh start, including finding a job in 2013. Brooke turned her hobby into a profession by studying psychology at Minnesota State University. She developed a particular interest in the psychology of serial killers and wrote a well-received paper. However, her personal life struggled due to a codependent relationship with William, marked by excessive drinking and substance abuse. Despite her outward success, Brooke's mental health deteriorated, leading to withdrawal, strained relationships at work, and a job change. Her obsession with dark human psychology exacerbated her emotional turmoil. The situation culminated on December 23, 2014, when Brooke lost custody of her children and was hospitalized for a panic attack, receiving a PTSD diagnosis. In 2015, Brooke wrote about feeling drained in her relationship with William Hahn. She felt he no longer made an effort to be intimate, and their moments together were brief and unsatisfying. As time passed, Brooke became withdrawn and isolated, exacerbated by a gallbladder disease diagnosis. The situation escalated in 2016 when William brutally beat her, pleaded guilty to assault, and was ordered to stay away. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where there were no longer any healthy moments. A major issue was that Brooke had become unable to have children following an abortion in 2011. Despite this, her partner William continually pressured her to have a child. In an attempt to keep him from leaving, Brooke lied about being pregnant in early 2017, even going so far as to email him a fake ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. To further convince William, Brooke found a recording of a random baby's heartbeat online and presented it as the heartbeat of their unborn child. However, by August 2017, it became clear that Brooke was not pregnant. William, having already announced the pregnancy to those around him, was unwilling to admit the truth and instead demanded that Brooke produce a child. With her medical knowledge, Brooke began compiling a list of items needed to induce labor, driven by her desire to appease William's demands. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke visited Savannah at her downstairs apartment and offered her $20 to model a dress Brooke was supposedly making. Savannah agreed and, before heading upstairs to Brooke's apartment, ordered a pizza, expecting to eat it when she returned home an hour later. She had to drive her younger brother to work later that day. However, Savannah failed to return on time. Her brother went to Brooke's apartment around 2:30 p.m. and heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one answered the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also visited Brooke's apartment and knocked on the door. Brooke shouted that they were still working on the dress and that Savannah was trying it on, which was why she couldn't answer the door. As Savannah's mother, Norberta, returned home, she drove her son to work herself. She found the pizza untouched and tried to contact Savannah by text, but received no response. Norberta then visited Brooke's apartment, looking for her daughter. She noticed that Savannah's shoes, purse, car keys, and belongings were still in the apartment. Given Savannah's pregnancy and related discomfort, it was unlikely she would go for a walk. Norberta called Ashton, hoping he might have picked up Savannah, but he said he hadn't heard from her either. Later that day, the police searched Brooke and William's apartment, as it was Savannah's last known location. The landlord allowed them in and did not obstruct their search. However, since they didn't have a warrant, the police did not search closets or behind closed doors. The police department explained to the family that Savannah was an adult and capable of making her own decisions without informing her family. With no evidence of a crime having occurred in or near the home, investigators concluded that Savannah had left voluntarily. The family was upset by the police department's indifferent attitude towards the case. The police conducted 2 more searches of the apartment but found nothing. However, William would later admit that during one of the searches, he hid the baby in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser with the shelves removed. 2 days after the murder, they disposed of the dresser containing Savannah's body by dumping it into the river from a bridge. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers informed the police that he had mentioned having a baby at home. That same day, neighbors of the apartment building reported hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5 and immediately contacted the police. With this new information, the officers obtained a warrant and returned to the apartment for a more thorough search, during which they found a live newborn baby girl. Brooke revealed that Savannah herself had secretly given her the baby just 2 days after Savannah's disappearance. According to Brooke, Savannah had previously expressed that she did not want the baby. In fact, Savannah had visited Brooke earlier to ask how she could induce labor on her own. Then, in the early hours of the morning 2 days later, Savannah showed up at Brooke's doorstep with the baby and handed him over. Savannah was reported missing, and the baby was taken into temporary custody by Cass County Social Services. A DNA test later confirmed the baby's parentage, and he was reunited with his father for a short period. 8 days after her disappearance, a fisherman discovered a body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. The body was identified as Savannah's through a tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." Subsequently, Brooke, Crew, and William were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to the police. They eventually began to confess to their crimes. Brooke initiated a physical altercation with Savannah, who was pregnant, by accusing her of stealing and mistreating her cat. The confrontation escalated into a physical scuffle, during which Brooke pushed Savannah, causing her to hit her head on the bathroom sink and lose consciousness. Brooke then used a knife to make a cut from hip to hip, intentionally harming Savannah and her unborn baby. Savannah repeatedly lost and regained consciousness while Brooke did this. When questioned, Brooke admitted that William was not aware of the impending plan. According to Brooke, William came home, entered the bathroom, and saw Savannah's injured body. He asked if Savannah was alive, and Brooke replied that she didn't know. William then left the bathroom briefly and returned with a rope, which he used to strangle Savannah, ensuring her death. After the murder, Brooke and William cleaned the bathroom, scrubbing the floor and walls, and hid Savannah's body in a bathroom closet. When police officers arrived at the door, Brooke attempted to remain calm and composed. The officers searched the apartment but, lacking a search warrant, were unable to thoroughly inspect the premises, including closets and dressers. As a result, they did not find Savannah's body. The perpetrator stated that the child was lying under a blanket on their bed, next to William, during the searches that day. The child was calm and didn't cry, which is why they weren't discovered. However, by the third inspection on August 20th, the body had been moved and hidden in a dresser. Meanwhile, the infant was concealed in a suitcase. On the early morning of August 21st, the dresser was carried down the stairs, loaded into a Jeep Cherokee, and driven to a river, where it was disposed of. William denied participating in the crime but admitted to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement to cover up the crime. Brooke and William were set a $2 million bail, which William found unreasonable and unrealistic. Brooke Crew received a life sentence without parole. During the trial, William's involvement in the crime was not proven. However, Brooke's cellmate, Jennifer Robinson, testified against Brooke. According to Jennifer, Brooke claimed to have strangled Savannah with a rope after learning about Savannah's affair with William and suspecting that Savannah's child might be William's. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William of conspiracy to commit murder. Nevertheless, on October 30, 2018, William was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, having pleaded guilty to the charge. The following spring, in May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. After a sentencing review trial on October 7, 2019, Judge Olin stated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he would still impose the harshest possible sentence, which was 20 years in prison. Considering that William had already spent 775 days behind bars, he will have to serve more than 7 additional years of his 20-year sentence. Norberta believes her daughter Savannah's disappearance wasn't taken seriously because she's Native American. This sparked Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp to introduce Savannah's Law, signed in October 2020, to address violence against Native American women by improving collaboration between authorities. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott was a 26-year-old kind and intelligent young woman with a passion for education, much like her father, Robert. As a teacher, she enjoyed teaching English and drama at Leeton High School, a job that gave her a great sense of pride and fulfillment. She was known for her enthusiasm, love for learning, and beautiful smile. Stephanie and Aaron's friendship, formed in their youth, blossomed into romance as they entered adulthood. They began dating in 2012 and, after several years of building a life together, decided to take the next step and get married. As the big day, April 11, 2015, was just around the corner, the wedding preparations were well underway. With everything set and almost complete, from catering and decor to travel plans, all they needed to finalize was a dress rehearsal for their special day, dance lessons, and romantic honeymoon arrangements. In early April, Aaron invited Stephanie to a party out of town, but she declined, opting to stay behind and complete some deadline tasks, including preparing lesson plans for her upcoming absence. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie went to her school in Leeton, New South Wales, to drop off some homework with a substitute teacher. She parked her car on the street and met a colleague who lived nearby. Together, they opened the school gates and went inside. After locking the gates behind them, Stephanie went to the English department office, where she sent a confirmation email to a bus company about transportation for her wedding guests. After working for a couple more hours, Stephanie felt relieved that she had completed all her tasks. She left the administrative building and headed towards the gates. Meanwhile, Aaron was expecting Stephanie to be away for a few hours, but as the evening approached, he began to worry because he hadn't heard from her. On April 5th, she didn't reply to his messages. When he returned home after 7 p.m., he found that Stephanie was still not there, and her car was missing from the street. At first, Aaron tried to reassure himself that Stephanie might be feeling overwhelmed by the upcoming wedding and her responsibilities as a teacher, and that she just needed some time to herself. Aaron became increasingly concerned as hours passed. As his worry grew, he sent her another text in the morning, then called her family. After Stephanie's disappearance exceeded 24 hours, Aaron reported her missing at the Leeton police station. The police investigation revealed her car was also missing, leading them to speculate she may have been in an accident or stranded while driving away from Leeton High School. To assist in the search, helicopters were deployed and officers were sent to the school. The police investigation was hindered by the limited number of people at the school on Easter Sunday, but this also helped rule out hundreds of suspects. According to the report, Stephanie had deactivated and reactivated the classroom alarm system between 1:30 p.m. and 1:38 p.m. Unfortunately, this was the only concrete detail the police could gather. Attempts to track Stephanie's phone were unsuccessful, as it was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media showed no activity after Saturday, April 4th. A witness who was near Leeton High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness saw Stephanie's car parked under a covered walkway, but didn't think much of it. However, the car was later found to be missing. A school employee who was questioned by detectives reported an unusual conversation he had with one of the school's cleaners the day after Stephanie's disappearance. The employee asked the cleaner when he last saw Stephanie, and the cleaner replied that he hadn't seen her on the day she went missing. When questioned about the possibility of Stephanie running away due to wedding stress, Vincent Stanford, the 24-year-old cleaner, responded with a nervous laugh. The witness who observed this interaction also noticed that Vincent had scratches on his face. As a result, the police decided to investigate further and asked Vincent for more information. During the brief conversation with detectives, Vincent explained that he had stopped by the school to empty the trash cans, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed he was in a hurry to buy groceries and only stayed for a short time. Vincent stated that he did not see Stephanie during his visit. He also reported leaving the school around 3 p.m. to go to his usual store. The police investigation took a significant turn when they discovered that the store Vincent claimed to have visited on the specified date was actually closed. This raised suspicions about Vincent's alibi, and investigators decided to question him further. A search of Vincent's home, with his mother's consent, led to the discovery of a key set matching the description of Stephanie Scott's keys. The search of Vincent's home and belongings yielded additional evidence, including several MDF panels in the back seat of his car, which appeared to be stained with blood. Police also noticed tire tracks in front of the house that didn't match Vincent's vehicle. A used condom was found on the ground near the house, with its wrapper discovered in Vincent's bedroom. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, Vincent said he was out taking photos. He pointed to a camera in his car as proof, but this explanation only added to the suspicion surrounding him. Detectives obtained permission from Vincent to view the camera. When they turned it on, they saw a disturbing photo of a charred woman's corpse in a wooded area. Vincent attempted to downplay the image, claiming it was a still from a movie he had filmed that he thought was humorous. However, the police quickly realized that the photo was, in fact, a crime scene image of Stephanie Scott. Vincent Stanford, a 24-year-old cleaner at Leon High School, was immediately taken into custody. A search of Vincent's phone and laptop uncovered disturbing photos, including images of young girls and women he had been stalking. A new witness came forward on April 17th, reporting that they saw a car near a canal on Easter Sunday at around 4 p.m. The witness described a man getting out of the car and throwing something that looked like a laptop into the water before driving away. The police retrieved the laptop from the canal and confirmed that it belonged to Stephanie. Meanwhile, divers searched the New South Wales River area for her body. As the search continued, police thoroughly searched fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's car was found earlier in the week, as well as the canal where the laptop was discovered. In a surprising turn of events, Vincent, who was already in custody, requested to speak with the police. He provided detailed information about the crime, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on a computer in the upstairs teacher's room with her door open. Vincent claimed that he was cleaning the area and needed to take some bins upstairs, which is when he encountered Stephanie. Vincent told detectives that he acted on a sudden urge to kill Stephanie by retrieving a kit containing handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and cleaning supplies from his home. He had also researched violent crimes online. Upon returning, he found Stephanie preparing to leave and, as she walked by, she smiled and wished him a happy Easter. Vincent then grabbed her and dragged her into a storage room. When questioned about the scratches on his face, Vincent attributed them to Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails as she defended herself. He described grabbing her from behind, covering her mouth and wrapping his arm around her waist, before dragging her to the storage room. Once inside, he slammed the door shut, threw her to the ground, and punched her repeatedly. Vincent stabbed Stephanie to death, motivated by a twisted pleasure in the act rather than hatred. He acknowledged a history of violent thoughts and suspected underlying psychological issues. Afterwards, he calmly returned home to eat and drink, leaving her body in the storage room. Vincent returned to the school and put Stephanie's body in the trunk of her car. He then drove the car to his home and parked it on the street. The next day, Easter Monday, Vincent drove the car to a national park. There, he removed Stephanie's body from the trunk and left it on the ground. He observed that her face was severely bruised and swollen, with a large bruise under her eye. Vincent covered the body with branches and doused it with gasoline. He then used a match to set the body on fire and discarded the match. For a short time, Vincent stayed at the scene, taking several photos of Stephanie's body with his camera. He waited for a few minutes to ensure the fire was burning steadily before leaving. Afterward, he abandoned Stephanie's car on a remote country road and walked back to town. Vincent denied brutally treating Stephanie, despite detectives knowing otherwise. He faced additional charges of severe harm and physical injury. Questioned about photos of the woman partially undressed, Vincent claimed he often removed her clothes, leaving her bra, which he kept as a souvenir. However, Vincent had actually sent the wedding and graduation rings to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the stolen items at a jewelry store and destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. A 24-year-old man, identified as Marcus, was arrested at his home in the Adelaide Hills at 7 a.m. Marcus worked on a flower farm and was described by colleagues as quiet and reserved, rarely interacting with them outside of work. During the trial, Marcus Stanford was unrepresented by a lawyer. When the judge asked if there were any reasons he should not be sent to Leeton, Marcus responded in a strong Dutch accent that he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go. The search for Stephanie eventually came to a tragic end. While Vincent was still confessing to the crime, the police had already discovered Stephanie's body just one day before her scheduled wedding date. A badly burned female body was found in a national park, approximately 60 miles from Leeton Middle School. A thorough investigation revealed that Stephanie had suffered a brutal attack, receiving 40 blows to the head, which ultimately led to her death. She had also been stabbed in the neck before her body was discarded and set on fire. Photographs found on Vincent's phone were identified as being of Stephanie, leaving no doubt about his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother Marcus were brought to trial. Initially, Vincent denied any involvement in the crime. Vincent Stanford was deemed a danger to society after undergoing psychological tests, which indicated he was a potential serial killer. He showed a disturbing lack of emotions and empathy, often reacting to serious situations with laughter and indifference. Further investigation into his past revealed several alarming incidents. Vincent was born in Australia, but his family relocated to the Netherlands when he was 3 years old. They later returned to New South Wales when he was 7. As a child, Vincent exhibited concerning behavior, including fantasizing about committing murder at the age of 12 and nearly strangling his teacher. His classmates described him as a psychopath, and he was eventually sent to a behavioral correction school due to his violent and disobedient behavior. Vincent would sneak into the women's restroom to secretly observe female students during lunch breaks. His phone contained 2,000 photos of a young girl and a diary documenting his observations, including following her home and recording her schedule. One entry read, "She's home alone at 15:40. Enough time to abduct." The investigation into Stephanie Scott's murder took a surprising turn when her killer's twin brother, Marcus Stanford, was found to be involved. A search of the Stanford home uncovered evidence, including Stephanie's blood on a knife and her bra. Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison for selling Stephanie's stolen jewelry and aiding his brother. After his release in October 2016, the Leeton community expressed outrage and made it clear Marcus was not welcome. A petition with over 60 signatures called for an appeal of the court's decision. Marcus briefly returned to Leeton before leaving the area, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Marcus has expressed genuine remorse for his past actions and has acknowledged that his behavior was reckless and regrettable. Since his release, he has made it clear that he intends to avoid trouble and move forward with his life. However, he also wants to maintain his distance from his twin brother, Vincent, and has no interest in rekindling their relationship. Vincent has been sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for aggravated sexual assault, with both sentences effective as of April 8, 2015. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to parents William, Bill, Rachel, and Patricia, Trish, Rachel. She grew up with a younger brother, John, with whom she shared a close family bond. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she excelled academically as a member of the National Honor Society. She was also an active athlete, participating in soccer and volleyball. Despite the unconventional nature of her career aspirations, Rachel had always dreamed of becoming a funeral director since childhood. This passion led her to pursue a degree in mortuary science at Youngstown State University. Her hard work and dedication earned her recognition as one of the top students in her field and secured a scholarship. Following her undergraduate studies, Rachel enrolled in the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Mortuary Science. She became a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association and moved to Columbus, where she completed an internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. Rachel approached her work with great respect and saw it as her duty to support and care for families during difficult times. Rachel's internship was nearing its end, and she had high hopes of becoming a permanent employee at the Bureau. On January 26, Rachel Anderson celebrated her 24th birthday. The next day, her brother John visited her from Warren. Before he left to return home on January 28, Rachel gave him the key to her apartment. However, John accidentally took the key with him when he left. Later that day, Rachel realized she had misplaced her key and contacted John Kennedy, who had a spare, to arrange a pickup. After speaking with her mother around 6:30 p.m., Rachel retrieved her key from Kennedy. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it unlocked. Rachel stopped for dinner at her favorite restaurant and arrived home around 7:30 p.m. As she entered her apartment, she was confronted by a man who was waiting for her. He abducted her, taking her to the top floor of the building, where he restrained her using various objects. The man bound Rachel's feet and ankles with a hair dryer cord, tied her hands with a belt and blinds cords, and used a curling iron cord to restrain her wrists. He also gagged her to silence her. A man then forced Rachel to reveal her PIN numbers and subjected her to torture, abuse, and physical harm. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket, causing blunt force trauma and the stab wound to her head. After the attack, the man hid Rachel's body in a closet, leaving her partially naked with the electric blanket cord still tied around her neck. He then stole her car and used her bank cards to make purchases at several stores in Columbus. Forensic evidence revealed that bruising and red marks on Rachel's ankles and wrists suggested she was alive when the perpetrator restrained her. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope used to tie her up and on Rachel's body. The coroner's autopsy report concluded that Rachel's death was caused by a stab wound to the head and neck, contradicting the initial theory of strangulation. After interviewing Rachel's co-workers and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, detectives explored alternative explanations for the attack. They returned to Rachel's apartment to search for clues, hoping to identify the perpetrator. During this search, they found Rachel's purse, which was missing her wallet, on the living room floor. 2 weeks later, Rachel's mother discovered the 9-inch steak knife used in the stabbing in a box in the apartment. Detectives initially thought the crime was a robbery, but the brutality and torture inflicted on Rachel suggested that the perpetrator was not just a thief, but a skilled and sadistic individual who took pleasure in exerting power over his victim. The investigators considered various motives but had no suspects and kept the investigation details secret to avoid compromising the case. Later, DNA samples were found on Rachel's body and at the crime scene, but unfortunately, they did not match anyone in the Special Services database. Fortunately, a surveillance video showed 2 people using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her death, and cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. An investigation revealed a crucial lead when a phone number linked to the night of January 28, 2018, at Rachel's apartment was identified. Location data analysis led authorities to the suspect. Anthony Perrin, a 54-year-old convicted offender, was arrested. He had spent 33 years in prison for violent crimes, including rape, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Anthony Perrin had a turbulent past, beginning with his upbringing by grandparents, then living with his mother. Mental health diagnoses, including conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder, indicated serious social problems. He entered a youth commission facility at age 14, then transitioned into foster care. At 15, Anthony faced his first charge in 1980 for abusing a young foster brother he babysat. A year later, he threatened his girlfriend's mother with a knife and attempted to drown her before fleeing. In 1982, Anthony Perrin was convicted of crimes in Franklin at 17 and served 24 years. After release in 2006, he moved to Georgia, was charged with forgery in 2007, and spent 9 more years in prison. Released in 2017, he returned to Ohio, required to check in with the sheriff's department every 90 days. On August 21, 2017, Anthony was caught with a woman in his car. 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license and found with a knife and shotgun, but wasn't arrested. Later, CCTV footage showed Rachel's car outside a store, with a man getting out of the passenger side. The driver wasn't visible, but police identified the man as Anthony Slits. He was questioned and revealed he was approached by a man who offered him money to cash in his ex-girlfriend's cards. Slits confirmed Anthony's identity and outlined their route on January 28, 2018, when they tried to cash out Rachel's stolen cards. Anthony Perrin remained at large until his capture on February 9, 2018, when he was taken into custody following a multi-day stakeout of his sister's home. Anthony was charged with multiple counts of serious crimes, including burglary, robbery, kidnapping, rape, and murder. Nearly 2 years later, his trial began on February 4, 2020, and 4 witnesses testified on the first day, including Rachel's co-worker Jonathan Kennedy, who was the person who found Rachel. The trial continued with testimony from Jonathan and the manager of the apartment complex where the crime occurred. Officer Frank Ghani, who was parked outside the apartment when the body was discovered, also testified and shared the surveillance footage with the jury. On the same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. However, it became apparent that Anthony was intentionally delaying the proceedings. The prosecution presented expert witnesses on February 10, including a latent print expert, who explained how technology was used to track the use of Rachel Anderson's debit card and its connection to the crime scene. The defendant's sister also testified, revealing that her brother had given her the debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. However, after watching news reports, she discovered that the card actually belonged to Rachel. The final day of testimony was February 11th. The medical examiner testified that the defendant's DNA was found at the crime scene. Additionally, a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office provided details about the extent of Rachel Anderson's injuries. During the final hearing on February 12, Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Killen presented the state's closing argument, outlining the events of the crime and asserting that Anthony had murdered Rachel Anderson in cold blood. In contrast, defense attorney Larry Thomas acknowledged that Anthony had used Rachel's cards, but argued that he was not responsible for the crime. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case lacked concrete evidence, as the DNA and cell phone data did not definitively link Anthony Perrin to the crime. However, after deliberating for approximately 6 hours over 2 days, the jury of 4 men and 8 women found him guilty on all counts. The prosecution pursued the death penalty due to the severity of the crime, which involved the murder of Rachel Anderson during an aggravated burglary. Additionally, Anthony's prior conviction for a similar attempted murder of a woman weighed against him. Prosecutor Bryan stated that some individuals consistently disregard the law, and Anthony Perrin is a prime example. The sentencing phase of the trial began on February 18th. In an attempt to mitigate the sentence, the defense presented evidence of Anthony's troubled childhood, but the prosecution counter-argued that the aggravating circumstances of the case outweighed any mitigating factors. During the trial, it was established that Anthony Perrin was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Despite this, several people testified on his behalf, including his mother, sister, a psychologist, and a former teacher. Anthony also addressed the jury, sharing a 13-minute unscripted statement about his troubled past, including an abusive childhood and difficulties after being released from prison. In his statement, Anthony described feeling helpless and claimed that the system had failed him. He blamed the justice system for his current situation but did not directly address the crime or apologize for it. After deliberating for 3.5 hours, the jury was unable to agree on the death penalty and instead recommended life in prison without parole. The sentencing took place on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother was visibly emotional in court as the verdict was announced. Rachel's father also spoke, expressing his surprise at how Anthony, a repeat offender with a history of violence, was able to make demands and become hysterical during the investigation. The case of Rachel Anderson's murder drew to a close as Anthony Perrin's sentence was handed down. However, what stood out was not the severity of the sentence, but rather the disturbing behavior of one individual, Anthony Perrin himself. As an adult, he shifted the blame away from himself and onto the system, denying any personal responsibility for his heinous actions. Despite his efforts to deflect blame, Anthony received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violent crimes. In addition, He was given 63 more years for other crimes including burglary, kidnapping, robbery, and various violent offenses. This marked a total sentence of multiple consecutive life terms plus 63 years. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lizzie Marriott. In the fall of 2012, Lizzie Marriott began her studies in marine biology at the University of New Hampshire. To reduce her living expenses, she moved out of her family home in Massachusetts, where she lived with her parents, Bob and Melissa Lizzie, and relocated to Chester to live with her aunt and uncle, Tony and Becky Hannah. Lizzie quickly became a beloved member of her aunt and uncle's family. She had a passion for marine animals, which led her to pursue a degree in marine biology. Although she was now 2 hours away from her parents, they remained close and kept in regular contact. Lizzie was known for her kind, gentle, and sweet nature, which made her a favorite among those who knew her. Lizzie's aunt recalled that whenever Lizzie came home, she'd exclaim, "I'm home," and it filled their hearts with joy. Lizzie was thriving in her new life, with new opportunities opening up in her free time. She had found a job at Target, where she quickly fit in and earned respect from her colleagues. That's where she met Kate McDonough, an 18-year-old who quickly became a close friend. They girls often hung out after work, and one day, Kate invited Lizzie over to her apartment. On subsequent invitations, Lizzie was happy to accept. Lizzie and Kate planned a cozy evening with dinner and a movie on October 9th. However, Kate's boyfriend Seth joined them, bringing a lively atmosphere. Seth was a man of many talents, with a theater arts background and a black belt in karate. Lizzie's family and friends expected a fun evening together. When she failed to return home at the agreed-upon time, her relatives initially thought she might have stayed overnight at a friend's place and then headed to university. However, when she didn't show up the next day, her aunt and uncle grew concerned and contacted her parents, who were also unaware of her whereabouts. Lizzie's parents immediately drove to Chester, reporting their daughter's disappearance to the police along the way. The investigation began, and the police questioned everyone who knew Lizzie, but her relatives had no idea where she had gone. Fortunately, a friend named Nate revealed that he thought Lizzie might be with Kate McDonough. Nate asked Kate if she had seen Lizzie. Kate replied that she hadn't. Detectives began investigating the new information provided by Nate. In the meantime, they discovered that her bank accounts showed no activity, and her phone was dead. This led them to rule out the initial theory that she might have been involved in an accident. Shortly after, her car was located. After interviewing her friends and co-workers, investigators gathered some information about Kate and her boyfriend, Seth. Lizzie and Kate's acquaintances have noticed they spending increasing amounts of time together, despite their vastly different personalities. Outwardly, Lizzie is sociable and compassionate, whereas Kate is known for being rude. The reason behind their close relationship remains unclear. Lizzie was once a cheerful person, but after meeting Seth, she changed. Her co-workers noticed a difference, and she distanced herself from relatives who disapproved of Seth's behavior. They started dating when Lizzie was 17 and moved in together in Dover, New Hampshire, after she turned 18. On October 12th, authorities questioned Kate and Seth separately but at the same time. This tactic helped investigators gather more information. For 2 hours, Kate consistently denied ever having met Lizzie on October 9th, but then she stopped cooperating completely with the investigation. Seth, on the other hand, was more open with the details. He contradicted Kate's account, saying that Lizzie was actually at their place on the 9th. Seth described the events of that day saying that he, Kate and Lizzie watched a movie together, played strip poker and then engaged in a consensual threesome. However, the situation becomes tragic when things don't go as planned. Lizzie accidentally dies while tied with rope. Too shocked and afraid of being misunderstood, Seth and Kate decided to dump Lizzie's body into the Piscataqua River on Pierce Island. After being questioned for 11 hours, Seth accompanied police to the location and reenacted how he and Kate threw the body off the cliff. Lizzie's parents doubted Seth's account of her death, insisting she was in a loving relationship with Brittany and wouldn't cheat or take her own life. They urged police to find her body for a proper burial. The search continued with volunteers and a detective, but strong river currents made it possible her body was swept to the Atlantic. The investigation into Lizzie's death continued with a search of Seth's apartment. Detectives found the apartment cluttered and disorganized, with evidence of Seth's interest in occultism and black magic. A search of the surrounding area turned up a bag in a trash container containing black leather gloves, a sweatshirt, and men's underwear with DNA from both Seth and Lizzie, confirming their intimate relationship. The sweatshirt was identified as Lizzie's by her family. Later, Kate McDonough confirmed some of his account. According to Kate, she, Seth, and Lizzie spent the evening of October 9th watching a movie and playing strip poker, which eventually led to a consensual intimate encounter involving rope bondage, which Lizzie had agreed to. Lizzie Marriott was having a good time until she suddenly had a seizure, suffocated, and lost consciousness. She stopped breathing when Seth and Kate lifted her up. Kate thought it was an accident, but an unexpected witness's testimony took the investigation in a new direction. A young woman visited the police station, claiming to have crucial information about the Lizzie Marriott case and requesting to speak with the lead detectives. During the conversation, she introduced herself as Catherine Fish, Seth Mella's ex-girlfriend. Her statements implied that Seth was capable of murder. She revealed that Seth had once confided in her about a fantasy in which he took someone's life. To understand Catherine's testimony, it's essential to examine her past relationship with Seth. They met 10 years ago, and initially, Seth seemed attentive and caring. However, during their first intimate encounter, Catherine discovered Seth's interest in BDSM. Seth initially seemed great, but he revealed a cruel and controlling side over time. He didn't tolerate disagreement or boundaries. After sharing dark fantasies, Kinda felt trapped and scared, especially when Seth physically attacked her, grabbing her throat and refusing to let go despite her pleas. This incident shattered her illusions about their relationship. After moving to a new city, Kinda felt isolated and alone, dependent on Seth. As his behavior escalated, he introduced other women, proposing a polyamorous relationship. Kinda felt trapped, afraid to leave due to Seth's controlling behavior. It took months for her to gather the courage to escape the toxic relationship. In May 2014, Seth Mella appeared in court, facing not only intentional murder charges but also accusations of taking advantage of multiple individuals. Several people testified against him, including Kate McDonough. 2 months after Lizzie's death, Kate was arrested and held in custody on charges of obstructing justice and interfering with the investigation. During her time in custody, Kate had ample opportunity to reflect on the events and consider who she was protecting. While imprisoned, Kate and Seth stayed in close touch and envisioned a life together in a country where they could not be extradited. They shared dreams of getting married, starting a family, and building a future, but their escape plan stalled in the winter of 2012. Seth convinced his cellmate, Ryan Bachman, who was about to be released, to help their escape. The plan was for Ryan to use his bank account to withdraw money, buy drugs, and sell them to increase their initial investment. They intended to use the money to purchase guns, 2 cars, explosives, and a boat. Ryan had different intentions and chose to keep the money for himself, causing Seth to give up on their plan to escape. Meanwhile, authorities became aware of their scheme. Seth wrote to Kate and hinted at a reunion in the afterlife, suggesting he believed in its existence. This could imply that Seth was vaguely suggesting Kate should consider ending her life to join him in the afterlife. As time passed, Kate's thoughts became clearer, allowing her to make a more rational decision when the prosecutor's office presented her with a favorable deal in 2014. Under the agreement, Kate was required to reveal the truth about the events that occurred on the evening of October 9th, and in return, her potential 20-year prison sentence was significantly reduced to 3 years. This offer was especially beneficial in light of the circumstances that later came to light during the investigation. As part of their agreement, Kate acknowledged that she was deeply intimidated by Seth and followed his instructions without hesitation. Over time, Seth had slowly stripped Kate of her autonomy and stifled her ability to make decisions for herself. Approximately 6 weeks before the tragic event, Seth had asked Kate to arrange a threesome with someone else while she was away on a 10-day theater tour, but Kate was unable to find someone to participate. Over time, Seth's messages to Kate became increasingly aggressive, transitioning from giving her instructions to making threats. He warned her of severe consequences if she didn't meet his demands, which included bringing a friend to participate in his plan. Kate invited Lizzie to visit her at home, and Lizzie agreed because she trusted Kate and had been to her place before. However, Kate didn't tell Lizzie that Seth would also be there, as she knew Lizzie might be hesitant. Seth had seen Lizzie's photos and was eager to meet her. On October 9th, Seth arrived at Kate's apartment at 9 p.m. At first, Kate and Lizzie chatted together, and Seth joined in later, initially creating a light-hearted atmosphere with his jokes and friendly demeanor. As they watched a movie, Seth suggested playing strip poker, dimming the lights to create an intimate setting. Lizzie began to lose the game, eventually ending up in her underwear. In another round, Seth suggested kissing Kate, but she refused, explaining that she was in a committed relationship and found the idea unpleasant. Seth suggested leaving Lizzie alone, but she refused. He retrieved a rope and gloves from his room, returned, and strangled her with the rope before she could react. After killing Lizzie, Seth committed a further act of violence against her body. His girlfriend, Kate, was present but did not intervene, claiming she was too scared to act. She feared that she would become the next victim if she tried to help. Later, at around 1 a.m., Seth and his girlfriend wrapped Lizzie's body in tarpaulin and placed it in a suitcase. They then transported the suitcase to Lizzie's car and drove to Pierce Island by the river. From the observation deck, they removed Lizzie's body from the suitcase and threw it off the cliff. After the incident, Kate and another person cleaned up inside her car. Then they drove to the campus parking lot, where Kate parked her vehicle. From the parking lot, they walked a 10-mile distance to Kate's home. The experience left Kate severely shaken, and she went into shock. She was also fearful of testifying against Seth in the future, worrying that he might intimidate or silence her due to concerns for her safety. During the trial, Kate's excessive sobbing raised suspicions, with some doubting her emotional display and suggesting she was a skilled actress. Kate's defense claimed that Lizzie's death was an accident during intimacy, but acknowledged that Seth and Kate had disposed of the body. They alleged that Seth isolated and coerced Kate, affecting her mental state. The prosecution focused on deliberate murder, citing the discovery of gloves at the scene, which suggested premeditation. Roberta Gherkin and Paul Hickok, acquaintances of Seth Mella, testified for the prosecution. After Lizzie's murder, Seth called them at 10:49 p.m. asking for help. When they arrived after 11 p.m., they found Seth on the bed next to Kate McDonough in lingerie. Seth said, "This time things went too far." Roberta found Kate in the kitchen and suggested calling an ambulance. They chose not to intervene or contact police, avoiding involvement. Seth Mella was convicted of first-degree murder by strangulation and conspiracy in 2014, receiving a life sentence without parole. Kate McDonough, who was 20 at the time, got a 3-year sentence as part of a plea deal and was released in 2016. She has since maintained a low profile. Lizzie Marriott's parents, Bob and Melissa, do not feel the sentence is sufficient. They hope her case can serve as a warning to others, especially women. They created a memorial bench in her hometown since her body was never recovered.